Religion doesn't have exclusivity on kindness. They feel threatened by the question itself. Their entire facade of moral superiority and intellectual superiority completely shatters with a neutral question. If you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? It's pretty simple, actually. Gone. Destroyed. So like pathological people, selfish people, morons, they're all the same thing. And they don't answer questions. Instead, they try to make other people look bad. It's like, if they're here and the other person's here, then like maybe you'll think that they are moral and they understand. But like actually the reality is that they're both here. They're not even, they're like negative. They're not even like, this would be like, this right here is where babies start. Like goo goo gaga? That's a better, if a baby responded to this thread, it was like, goo goo gaga, that would be better than these like stupid counterattacks of ego. Where the person like doesn't have an answer to the question, and then like that's down here, where you can't even see it, it's negative. There are answers that are up here, and there are even answers way above that. But these people don't have those answers. They're worse than a baby when it comes to understanding. They're worse than a toddler who just goes goo gaga, because at least the fucking toddler doesn't assume the position of superiority and try to convince other people and mislead other people into thinking they have some type of understanding that they clearly don't have because they can't communicate it. Hey there. Alright, today we're going to look at this thread on Reddit, subreddit, atheism. Now this topic, the specific question that's being asked here, has been a topic on the internet between atheists and theists for a long time. So I'm going to go through the responses from the atheists. This is like practically, as far as I've seen, all responses from atheists. At the same time, I'm going to demonstrate or explain what is going on with each response. And then I'm going to keep track of the types of responses that we're seeing so that you can get an idea for what's actually happening in this discussion and why the discussion is unending. Because it has been a discussion practically since I've used the internet, which is like since the 90s. Since I was a very young kid that was himself determined atheist, and then eventually more open to, well, what is actually going on in our universe and in reality. But there are a lot of the same arguments and a lot of the same flawed responses for this type of discussion. So we're going to go over those. First, I have a picture here from my phone because I was looking at this last night and it's removed by the moderators, so you can't see the entire context of the post. There's not much more to it, but it's like, how do you respond? This is the question that theists prompt atheists to answer. How do you respond to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? The reason I ask this is because my friend at school asked me this when I said I'm starting to feel more atheist. And it's important to establish that this is the entire limitation of the original post. There isn't anything else to this. We have this neutral question. If you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? We could rephrase the question as, without religion, how does one determine their moral compass? And then it's also important to acknowledge that the only other part of this post that's included by the op is, the reason I ask this is because my friend at school asked me this when I said I'm starting to feel more atheist. There isn't anything else added to this. That's going to end up being important. As you can see here, the post was removed by moderators. They're saying that it's spam. So that part we don't get to see. There are a lot of responses to it, and it was up for a long time. 2,000 comments, 2,000.1 upvotes. Now let's go through their responses. And I'm going to keep track of what types of responses there are. Okay, so there's answer type counter on the left. We're going to see what types of answers we get. And it's important to note that although looking through this the first time, you might have a specific type of perception that leads you to thinking that there's like a wide variety of answers that are being given. By the end of looking through at least 100 of these comments, you're going to be able to see that they're almost all the same thing, and there are really only like 5 or 6 different responses that are given. And then we'll explore my conclusions of what's going on here. And then at the very end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually give an answer to this question that both atheists and theists, when I give them this explanation, they realize that they don't actually understand the answer to this question at all. Like, they don't understand how to determine a moral compass. They don't really have a moral compass. It's actually quite embarrassing for them. And it would be this embarrassing for these atheism people as well. But we'll get to that at the end. I'm not going to go over my answer right away because I want you to see the difference and experience the difference emotionally from having what seems like answers and how you feel when you think you have answers to something, and then how you feel when you have the explanation of how these responses aren't answers, plus after seeing like hundreds of responses, realizing the difference in how you feel then, and then finally the answer that I give you, which will be completely undeniable. Like, you'll be like, wow, like that's obviously the answer. Why, what's wrong with all these people that they're not even close to anything resembling an answer? Alright, how do you respond to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? The reason I ask this is because my friend at school asked me this when I said I'm starting to feel more atheist. That is literally such a stupid question. I always answer with a question. Without your religion, you'd just be out there murdering people? Alright, so this is one of the most common responses that atheists give to the question, which isn't an answer. That's like the first thing to acknowledge about this, is that this person doesn't answer the question. And as we go on, you'll see that the reason why people don't answer the question and instead copy the question back and turn it on the person that's asking the question is an indication of problems that person has. That is literally such a stupid question. I always answer with a question. Without your religion, you'd just be out there murdering people? The question is, how do you determine your moral compass without religion? The question isn't, are religious people better than atheists, the question isn't in any way making a statement about the idea that without religion that you don't have morals, and it certainly isn't making a statement about how without religion that you would be murdering people. This person's response is a counterattack. They're not answering the question. Instead, they're trying to use the question against the person asking the question to turn it back on the person and distract from the realization that this person can't answer the question. They don't know how you determine your moral compass without religion. So instead of admitting that, because they're a vain, egotistical moron, they instead use this method that a lot of egotistical people use of just copying a question back on a person and digressing by trying to trick them into wasting time answering the question back to them. This person doesn't understand the answer to the question. They don't understand how to determine a moral compass. Likely, they don't have a moral compass. And that's why they turn the question back around. So, what we have so far for our answer type is we have a counterattack. And we'll put that at a count at 1. We have 1 counterattack so far, and a non-answer. So far we have a non-answer counterattack. That is literally such a stupid question. This part's projection. This person answering the question is stupid. And then they projected onto the question their own stupidity because they can't answer it. I always answer with a question. Also, they probably don't always answer the question. This isn't something that happens, this topic doesn't happen often enough where someone could have an always response. I know, right? If you need a book to stop you from killing and being a bad person, then you are already messed up in the head already. So I'm not going to go through many of the responses, but it's important to note that at least at the beginning of this thread, that the original poster was responding with agreement with a lot of the things that, a lot of the responses that were being given against the question being asked. I know, right? And it's also important to acknowledge this is how a stupid person talks. I know, right? If you need a book to stop you from... That's not what was proposed by the question. The premise isn't saying that you need religion in order to have morals. It's a question of trying to determine how one has morals without religion. The question practically assumes the idea that one could have morals without religion. It just asks another person to answer that question instead of providing that answer. So far we have a counterattack with a non-answer. Let's go to reply number 2. Sympathy, empathy, mirror neurons, cultural pressures, and the laws and regulations of my nation and local government, like every decent human being on earth, whether they admit it or not. By the way, ask them if they find slavery moral or not, as multiple holy texts seem to agree it is morally agreeable. So this person starts off with what sounds like it could be an answer. Sympathy, or what sounds like could be multiple answers. Sympathy, empathy, mirror neurons, cultural pressures, and the laws and regulations of my nation and local government. Laws and regulations aren't morals. Culture and cultural pressure doesn't necessarily mean morals. So without further explanation, we don't really have an answer with cultural pressures. Mirror neurons, that's not common knowledge. Mirror neurons sounds like something that they copied from someone else. Mirror neurons, and I'm going to explain what it means. Mirror neurons. Maybe mirroring is what they're doing and their neurons are involved, or that the word neurons is used to like make what they're saying sound intelligent. But mirror neurons, no explanation. Empathy, no explanation. Sympathy, no explanation. But then they immediately pivot to, like every decent human being on earth, whether they admit it or not. So this person has projected onto everyone their vague answer, which is like a bunch of jargon stringed together that isn't actually an explanation, and they don't elaborate on what any of those things mean. When a person doesn't elaborate on what they mean, they don't provide any actual summary to go along with what they mean, but they instead start going into like an arrogant display of assumptions and projections, and then they continue with a counterattack. By the way, ask them if they find slavery moral or not, as multiple holy texts seem to agree it's morally acceptable. That means that this person can't actually define how any of these things that they're presenting as answers are relevant to the discussion. So they like immediately retreat to digression by counterattacking to try and get the focus on the person asking the question in a negative manner. So this is an unexplained answer. Like some of these might include answers like maybe you can determine morals with sympathy, but there's no actual explanation of how they're accomplishing that. They're just throwing out words that they hope will be accepted as an answer. And if you're a person that is in an equal egotistical position of feeling attacked, because that's what this person is doing and the last person is doing, and that's why they're counterattacking, then you'll take any answer. So anything that seems like it's against the person asking the question and the type of person that would ask the question, which would be a theist, you're going to accept that. But that's what stupid people do. That's an egotistical, selfish response. You know that you don't actually understand at that point. If you want to understand and you want to be an idiot, then you need to have answers that you can actually explain and summarize to people. If instead all you have are words you're stringing together like empathy, a lot of stupid people like to use words like empathy to make it sound like they're a person that understands things, but then they never explain what empathy is. Like a lot of people use the word empathy and practically no one explains what it means. Like I've explained what it means in Dunkathon, but these people are just going to throw it out and not even explain what it means. They don't have an explanation, and that's why they shift so aggressively to counterattacking. So far, what we have are 2 counterattacks and an incomplete answer. How does one determine their moral compass with sympathy? You're giving us an idea that could be an answer. It's a potential answer. So actually I'm going to change that. Instead of incomplete answer, we'll say potential but incomplete answers. I'm going to change the color of this, hopefully to make it a little bit more readable. But we don't have an actual answer. How does empathy help one determine their moral compass? They didn't explain. They just said empathy. Empathy. That's like if somebody asked you how to get to a specific city from your location, and then you were like, roads. It's like, that's not what we're asking for. We're asking, how do you get there? You need to, like, I know roads could be involved, but that's not a complete explanation. And that's the way that someone answers the question when they don't know the answer to the question, but they're so egotistical that they still want to be perceived as knowing the question. And then they have their counterattack. And as this goes on, you're going to see that when people counterattack with things like, by the way, ask them if they find slavery moral. The reason why they do this, it's consistent. And the reason why they do it is consistent as well. They do it because they don't have an answer that's valid to what's being asked. So, also, I'm gonna add here, what is the question, so that we don't lose track of that. The question is from the op. How do you respond to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? Alright, so far we have 2 counterattacks, a non-answer, and a potential but incomplete answer. The question, quote, a question I get asked by religious people all the time is, without God, what's to stop me from sexually assaulting all I want? And my answer is, I do sexually assault all I want, and the amount I want is 0. And I do murder all I want, and the amount I want is 0. The fact that these people think that if they didn't have this person watching over them, that they would go on killing, sexually assaulting, rampages, is the most self-damning thing I can imagine. I don't want to do that. Right now, without any God, I don't want to jump across this table and strangle you. I have no desire to strangle you. I have no desire to flip you over and sexually assault you. Penn Jillette. This might seem like it's an answer to the question, but it's actually digression. They don't answer the question. They're telling us that they don't feel the need to do these like terribly immoral things, but they're not. The question isn't, are you moral? The question is, how do you respond to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? The question isn't, are you just going to murder whoever you want? Are you going to sexually assault whoever you want? That's not what the question is. And the question in no way insists that the person asking the question believes that without religion, that a person is amoral. The question simply asks, without religion, how do you determine your morals? Penn Jillette gives what's probably the stupidest fucking thing he's ever said as an answer. I have no desire to strangle you. Okay, but we're not talking about whether or not you want to strangle people. We're talking about whether or not you are moral, or how you determine that. How do you determine your morality? And this isn't an answer. This says that this implies that morality has been determined, but it doesn't explain how morality is determined, which is the question that's being asked. It's even the question that's being asked in the quote. And it's also important to acknowledge that this person didn't provide an answer. This is also another thing that people have started doing a lot. They've started in internet discussions. People have started to not provide answers to questions, but instead just copy an answer that somebody else gave, and especially if it's a celebrity that's generally respected, then that means that maybe I understand the answer. This person doesn't understand the answer to the question, which is why they provided a dumbass quote from Penn Jillette that can be easily deconstructed in 1 or 2 sentences. This is Penn Jillette's answer. They didn't answer the question. Penn Jillette did not answer the question. The question is, how do you determine your moral compass without atheism? Not, are you a total scumbag because you don't have it? That's not what was asked. The question that was asked is, how do you determine your moral compass? How do you respond to, if you don't have a religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? The question is really, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? What this person has provided is not an answer. It's a copy of a non-answer that is a digression. It's not exactly a counterattack. It could be seen that way, but it really doesn't provide a counterattack, so I'm not going to count it as one. Instead, I'm going to put here that it's a copied non-answer. So now we have a copied non-answer. Or actually, because we already have non-answer, we'll have more specifically Penn Jillette quote. Did I spell Gillette right? 2 T's. Next. Okay, quoting question, how do you respond to if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? For starters, I would ask your friend whether or not they believe they would be a good person without religion and or God. So this person has immediately started by trying to flip the question back on the person. So they're copying the question back to the person. When somebody takes the question you're asking them and then puts that question back on you, that's an early sign that they don't have an answer to the question. If they say they agree, then they have conceded that you do not need religion or God to be a morally good person. That could be the case, but that still wouldn't answer the question. They may even know the answer to the question. A theist asking, how do you determine your moral compass without religion, might know the answer to that question. But they want to know if you know the answer to that question. They want to know if you have an answer that's different from their answer. And so they're prompting you to figure out what your answer to that question is. It could be the case that you don't need God to be a morally good person. But this person hasn't answered that question. They've done a sneaky, egotistical job of making it sound like they're answering the question so far, but they haven't actually answered the question. If they disagree, then your friend is a piece of shit. Oh, okay. If I'm sorry, but you should not need a 2,000-year-old book to tell you that sexual assault and murder is bad. If your friend needs a book to tell them that, then they are not a functioning member of society. Oh, it ends up being a counterattack by the end. So this is a non-answer of digression. Like, turn the question back on them, and I'm just going to put in here that it's a counterattack and a non-answer. But why this is important, and we'll see more as we explore more of the responses, because we're going to explore a lot of the responses, so that you can get a complete picture of what's actually happening in these discussions. And not just specifically this type of discussion between theists and atheists that has been ongoing for a long time, but also in general on the internet and resultingly over time in real life, is that people don't know how to answer questions, and these non-answers that are like pathological digressions are becoming commonplace through conditioning as more and more selfish idiots try to present themselves as someone that has an answer, but they don't actually have an answer. They don't understand how to answer the question. And what they sort of reveal in here is that they're projecting their own weaknesses and their own flaws. If you should not need a 2,000-year-old book to tell you about morals and stuff. Like, okay, but clearly this person does, because they don't have any way of explaining their morals. Instead, they just insist and imply that they understand morals, but without any explanation. I don't rely on external sources of morality. Good without God. This isn't an explanation. This is a non-answer. So like, oh, that you're saying that you can be good without God? Alright, I will consider that premise could be the case. And I might even have an explanation that doesn't necessarily require God, and that's what I'm going to give at the end of this. But this isn't an answer. I don't rely on external sources of morality. Okay, well, what do you rely on? That's what the question is. Good without God. That's the end of your response? You haven't explained how you determine morality. All you've done is implied that you do. And the type of person that asks a question that way doesn't understand the answer to the question. But they really want people to think that they understand the question. They don't, or the answer to the question. They don't understand the answer to the question. They don't have an answer. If they had an answer, then they would have provided it instead of simply implying that they could have an answer. This is a non-answer. It's not even a potential but incomplete answer. It's a non-answer. Theistic morality is archaic and terribly suboptimal. Alright, so we're starting with a counterattack. Which, we have to read the rest of what they're going to say, because we have to give them a fair chance. We can't just assume what they're going to say, which is what a lot of these people are doing. They're like assuming what was said, even though the question never made a point to say anything about morality from theism being like optimal and other things that people throw in. But when someone starts with this, you have to realize that if at any point there is this counterattack to a question that isn't an attack, these people are counterattacking a non-attack, a neutral question. They're counterattacking a neutral question. That there's a reason for why they're doing that. And then you can go into the rest of the response trying to determine like what's going on. Theistic morality is archaic and terribly suboptimal. It's filled with arbitrary and even harmful rules. That may be true, but the question has not been answered. What is theism bringing to the table today? Oh, and they turn it on theism now. Your friend is pretending theism is responsible for the morality and ethics of today. No, they're not. Their friend asked, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? It could be the case that they understand where you get your moral compass from, without religion. It could be the case that they don't understand. It's a totally fair question to be like, actually empathize with the position of a theist who has only determined their moral compass from religious teachings. They're experiencing life and they're like, okay, I understand right from wrong through a moral guide, basically. There's like another word for this that I'll go into later, but it's like something that I want to include with my answer to this question. But to summarize, they have a moral guide. And then they find out that there are people that aren't theists and thus don't have that same moral guide. So then it's a fair question at that point for them to ask, like, okay, so how are they determining morality? What are the methods that they're determining for morality? And then it's also a fair question of the premise that a theist has a moral guide from whatever religion they practice and then determines morality independent of that, and then thinks about atheists and goes like, I wonder if atheists are using the same method. And it's also fair in that case for them to ask what an atheist method is for determining their moral compass, rather than providing the answer, because sociopaths will just like piggyback off of whatever you said. Oh yeah, whatever you're saying! And that's like exactly what they're going to do at the end of this. Like, if these dumbasses in our atheism see my response by the end of this, then their response is going to be to just like retroactively practice wisdom by copying what I say. That's if they don't straight up try to reject it, which is going to be incredibly difficult to be convincing with, because the answer that I'm going to give is undeniable. You're already doing it. You just don't know how to put it to words, and you're not skillful at it. Or you are, and you understand what I'm going to say, but these people clearly don't. It is largely based on culture. Moral behavior is an evolved set of... Okay, your friend is pretending theism is responsible for the morality and ethics of today. It's not. Moral behavior is an evolved set of behaviors. An evolved set of behaviors. That seems questionable. Are they going to explain? It is largely based on culture. That's a shift, so no explanation. Now they're saying it's based on culture. Maybe it evolved with culture? Religions have rules, not morality. Religions have rules, and rules that determine morality, and they also have morality that doesn't reference rules. Being coerced into acting morally is simply being obedient. So now they're disingenuously representing religious teaching of morals as if all religious teaching of morals involves coercion, which isn't true. If we are coerced into a system that may not be good, with no way of correcting itself, we don't just run the risk of doing ill, it's nearly guaranteed. So if we're coerced, so if we assume the thing that they made up is true, then we're coerced into doing something that's not good, and we have no other way of determining how to correct ourselves, then we do ill, guaranteed. That could be the case, but this isn't an answer to the question. This is like a lot of words a person's using to make it seem like they're answering the question. That's like what a pathological person does. They don't have an answer to the question, which is why they're like wasting all this time like distracting us from that realization. Morals are more complex than being reducible to a few rules, or if subjugated by a dictator, commandments to follow. So they're counterattacking. They're trying to paint like the idea of whatever authority figures that theists believe in as being dictators. And they're saying that morals are more complex than being reducible to a few rules. This is the type of thing that someone says that like sounds like it makes sense. Like it's practically on paper logic that morals are more than a few rules. Like that's true, but you're not answering the question. The question is, how do you determine morality without those rules? And they don't have an answer, which is why they're not spending any time answering the question. Instead, they're wasting all this time trying to make us think that they have an answer, trying to imply that they have an answer, that there is an answer, but they don't actually have it, and they counterattack because they feel threatened by the question itself. Their entire facade of moral superiority and intellectual superiority completely shatters with a neutral question. If you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? Gone. Destroyed. And instead, all of this like egotistical counterattacking and like panicked responses. Time and time again. This is how someone talks when they're pathological. They like copy things. Time and time again, theists need to be dragged, kicking and screaming, all more copying. They need to be dragged, kicking and screaming into modernity, forced to not be racist, bigoted, unhealthy, etc. This person did not in any way answer the question. So we have another non-answer. Bring this down here so I can make this a little bit bigger. We have a counterattack. A counterattack to a neutral question, by the way. And then a non-answer. And then another digression. This is like how dumbass pathological people enable each other. If someone can get you to believe absurdities, they can get you to commit atrocities. They're like responding to this person, which by the way, this person got 87. They have 87 upvotes. Even though they didn't answer the question at all, and all they were doing is like egotistically panicking and counterattacking the question, or the person asking the question. And this idiot responds to what they're saying with something that also is another digression. So like pathological people, selfish people, morons, they're all the same thing. And they don't answer questions. Instead, they try to make other people look bad. It's like, if they're here and the other person's here, then like maybe you'll think that they are moral and they understand. But like actually the reality is that they're both here. They're not even, they're like negative. They're not even like, this would be like, this right here is where babies start. Like goo goo gaga? That's a better, if a baby responded to this thread, it was like, goo goo gaga, that would be better than these like stupid counterattacks of ego. The person like doesn't have an answer to the question, and then like that's down here, where you can't even see it, is negative. There are answers that are up here, and there are even answers way above that. But These people don't have those answers. They're worse than a baby when it comes to understanding. They're worse than a toddler who just goes goo gaga, because at least a fucking toddler doesn't assume the position of superiority and try to convince other people and mislead other people into thinking they have some type of understanding that they clearly don't have because they can't communicate it. Basic human decency. No, correct that. Basic decency. Even chimps in the wild recognize basic decency, being nice, and the concepts of fairness and charity. If you need an entire theology to teach you that it's probably you that's broken, to teach you that, okay, if you need an entire theology to teach you that, it's probably you that's broken. So this person doesn't explain the answer. They use basic common decency. Basic decency. Which, like, implies the idea that it's simple. Simple decency. Like, anybody could figure that out. Even chimps could figure that out. Okay, but how did they figure it out? Oh, that's right, they didn't answer the fucking question. They made it seem like they answered the question, and then they counterattacked. Because they don't have an answer to the question. And underlying their smug, arrogant attitude is the subconscious realization that they don't have an answer. So they counterattack. Or is the opposite? Amazing answer. Amazing answer? There's no answer here. How is basic decency an answer to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? How does basic decency help you determine your moral compass? This is the type of thing where if you actually ask the person, then, like, them and every lazy idiot that wants that to be an acceptable answer, will like, it's just basic decency. If you don't understand that, then maybe you're a terrible person. Like, so you can't explain? So you can't explain how it's an answer? It's not an answer, then. So we have a counterattack and a non-answer again. And then we have the op being an egotistical moron. This is, like, important to understand. If an answer is amazing, then you don't need someone to say that it's amazing. But pathological, selfish people, they love to come in and, like, insist that each other's answers are good. Yeah, amazing answer. Oh my god. Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, amazing. If it's so amazing, then how come you don't just let the answer speak for itself? All because it's not amazing. You're trying to coerce people into thinking that it's amazing. You're trying to manipulate people into thinking it's amazing. Because this is a non-answer. And it's the type of answer that the op would like to give too. They want to attack the question, even though the question is neutral. If someone needs God to be a good person, then that person is a piece of shit. So the question isn't saying that you need God to be a good person. That's something that this person has simply projected onto the question. Because it would be convenient. It's another counterattack. It's like they're trying to make the other person look bad by insisting that that person doesn't have any other way of being a good person. But in reality, it's projection. They've copied their own failure onto the person asking the question. They don't have any way of determining how to be a good person. And they don't have God. So then they just have nothing. But they want you to think that other people are that way because they're an idiot. We have a counterattack. And also, this answer is presenting a false dichotomy. So I'm going to add that in here. And I maybe should have included it with earlier examples, but there will be plenty, I'm sure, that are just like this. So it's a false dichotomy. A false dichotomy is when a person establishes two... Oh, the thread's deleted, but there are comments? What the fuck? A false dichotomy is when a person establishes a dichotomy, as in they're saying that there are two potential possibilities for something. But it's a false dichotomy. Like those aren't... We're not limited to only the two options that they're presenting. So in this case, there's like an implied false dichotomy, which is that someone needs a God in order to be a good person. Or in other words, you either have God or moral teachings from religion and you are a good person, or you don't have those moral teachings and you're a bad person. And so these idiots like project that false dichotomy onto the theists. The theists didn't propose that false dichotomy. The atheists just made that false dichotomy up, and then they like projected it onto the theists so that they can like easily like argue against them and make them look bad. So it's a false dichotomy that's like also a straw man argument. Straw man fallacy. We'll add that as well. The straw man fallacy is when someone presents an argument or point of view to argue against, but it's not one that's actually held by or communicated or demonstrated by anybody else. Like, you just make up something and you're like, oh, you think this thing and that thing's stupid for these reasons, but like, you didn't say anything. This is a video, this is a stream, you can't say anything to me. Or maybe you can type something into the chat, but if you haven't said anything in the chat and I just make up how you feel, then that would be a straw man argument, or like making some type of convenient argument up that represents someone else and then arguing against that instead of arguing against what was said by the other person. We're social primates. Social primates are hardwired by evolution to be cooperative and altruistic to other tribe members. If that's the case, then how do we have immoral people? All blown up immediately. That's not an answer. These are like assumptions and jargon stringed together. Social primates, hardwired, evolution, altruistic, tribe. They're like soundboarding their way through an answer. This is, in my opinion, the best answer. This isn't an answer. This is like so easily deconstructed and demonstrated to be flawed. If the fact that we're social primates means that we're hardwired by evolution to be cooperative and altruistic to other tribe members, then we shouldn't have any people that are evil at all. We should have only moral people. The premise that they're presenting insists upon the idea that we're all moral agents that like are altruistic and cooperative. But we know that's not the case. This is another one of those types of answers that like if you're an egotistical moron and you want any type of counterattack, any type of counter-argument made against the original question, then you're going to take it. It's not actually an answer that explains anything. It sort of resembles the form of something that could be an answer, but if you actually consider it at all, it immediately falls apart. We could even go as far as being like, okay, we are social primates. But then we can't get to this conclusion. It's completely unacceptable. Because it insists that we're all cooperative and altruistic to each other or other tribe members, even though we're not. We already know that's not the case. In fact, we wouldn't even be having this discussion without the opposite of what this is claiming being true. This reads like the type of thing that some dumbass atheist celebrity came up with, or like minor celebrity, some idiot on a podcast that pretends to be an intellectual superior or authority figure on morality says, and then other people start to copy. But it doesn't actually make any sense when you evaluate it. So, whoops. So that's a false answer. Almost easy to break down as not an acceptable answer. I'll put unacceptable answer then. So that way it's like more clear how it's different from incomplete answer, is that it's unacceptable. I start with the reply. I get them from the same place you do. When someone talks like that, from the same place, they're copying. They don't have an answer. Let's read to see and maybe see if they can prove us wrong. Obvious response from theists is something like, well, I derive mine from insert holy book here. So now we're getting more evidence that this person is egotistical. They're like assuming answers. They would just project it onto them. Well, I derive mine from insert holy book here, and it's going to be an answer that conveniently sets up their response. It could totally be the case that a theist responds with that, but also, and not only from their holy book, but also from my own experiences. And like, this person is not even going to pay attention to that at all, because they're only going to look for the thing that sets up their like scripted response. It's pretty trivial to find horrifying behavior in these books, which you can then ask the atheist if they support. Also, it's a counterattack. Oh, did this sound like it was going to be an answer to you? It's a counterattack. It's a non-answer. When they don't, ask them why not. This is another thing that pathological people do often. They don't have the answer to the question, so they have to ask questions that make it seem like they have the answer, but they're really fishing for an answer from you. From here, you can basically point out that you can both use current societal norms to dictate your individual morality. Oh, from here, so like if everything goes exactly the way this person imagined and projected onto the scenario, then you can point out that you both use current societal norms to dictate your individual morality. So they're proposing the idea that societal norms are determining your morality. Societal norms and morality are not the same thing. Societal norms don't determine morality. Just because society has norms doesn't mean that those norms are normal. You both know, and doesn't mean that everyone follows them either. You both know that slavery is immoral, despite what any holy book says about the practice. Some people know that slavery is immoral without having to consider social norms. And people in the past have been led to believe through social norms that slavery is acceptable. So you're not actually getting good morals you're not getting morals really at all. You're not getting an understanding of a moral compass, which is what the question is asking. A moral compass points you in the right direction. A compass points you in directions. And that's what's being asked is, how are you pointing yourself in the right direction morally? But what this person is saying is basically that you can copy what society's doing, and that's not an answer. This is a counterattack with copying. And we have a lot of copying, so I'm going to include copying in here as well. Counterattack and copying. And how many things? We have for the Gillette quote is copying. We'll just put 2 for right now. Edit. To add to this, my answer to a similar question, what stops you from murdering and raping as many people as you want, is simple. I do. And it's just the Penn Jillette quote. I do those things. All the people I want to. I want to murder and sexually assault 0 people. It's just the Penn Jillette quote. So this person also copied, as part of their edit, they copied separately. So I'll put in the Penn Jillette quote. I'm keeping this Penn Jillette quote and copying as separate things because people will copy more than the Penn Jillette quote. Right. This person has copied responses and never answers the question. Oh, so I need to put non-answer as well. This is common on the internet now. Oh, instead of answering the question, I'll make you look bad! It'll make you look bad! That type of person is panicking. They don't have an answer to the question. They don't know how to answer the question. So instead they try to make other people look bad, because then maybe that means that they're good. It's like people that say that they practice empathy but are actually selfish. They just point to other people and are like, they're worse than me. That means that I must be practicing empathy. Nope. And that's why they don't say that, they just imply it. I thought of a pithy response this weekend. How do you avoid jumping off a cliff when there is no railing? Yeah, how do you avoid jumping off a cliff? This is simply digression. It's a non-answer. It's arrogant, but I'm not really tracking that. You can track that separately. This is a non-answer. To be as simple as possible, kindness. That's practically a synonym in this case. So the question could be rephrased as, if you don't have religion, then how do you determine kindness? This person isn't going to provide an answer. Religion does not have an exclusive on kindness. Oh no, they're feeling attacked. They're feeling attacked by the neutral question. Religion doesn't have an exclusivity on kindness. Oh, here we go. If you are kind, you will care about the state of others. You can extrapolate the rest from there. No, you can't. This is a non-answer. This is a non-answer with a counterattack. I'm going to start keeping track of how many things. So we're at, to be as simple as possible. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We're 12 answers in and we have no answer. We have no way of taking what these people are saying and turning it into an answer to the question, where do you get your moral compass from? Sans religion. We don't have that. We have a bunch of arrogant morons pretending that they're answering the question. I don't need the fear of hell to not be a tool. Morality doesn't come from religion. Nobody said that it does. Nobody said that you need the fear of hell to have morality. If it did, we would still be stoning women. Oh, and a counterattack. So with 13, a counterattack, false dichotomy, a non-answer, replies in, 9 counterattacks, 2 false dichotomies, a straw man, 9 non-answers, 1 potential but incomplete answer, 2 quoting Penn Jillette, 1 of them not citing him, an unacceptable answer, and 3 instances of copying. 3 identified instances of copying. That's a stupid question. Now we just have projecting. Projection. The first one was projection too. They were saying the same thing. It's stupid. Solvable projection in here. 2 forms of projection. Stupid person says that the question is stupid. That's not an answer to the question. We can also put... Actually, instead of keeping track of projection, because it's so close to the same thing as copying... and actually... we know this is a counterattack, and it's a non-answer. Let me take out copying. Or no. We don't know which ones are and aren't copying, so it does make sense to take out copying. Because we can see some of them are copying, but we can't actually keep track of everything that's copying. 7 out of 10 of their morals, 10 commandments, we don't even know if this person believes in the 10 commandments. That part isn't clear to us from the original post. So this person's projecting. We already know they're projecting. They're making assumptions about the person, and then they've copied that onto the person so they can set up whatever stupid response they have. 7 out of 10 of their morals, 10 commandments, are just different ways to worship God and have literal nothing to do with morals as they relate to humans and the human condition. This is straight up not true. So there's projection, and then a non-answer that's also a flat-out lie. So we include lie in here now. Specifically, we'll go with disingenuous representation and a non-answer. Also, a good chunk of them, like another idiot comes in, like off of this stupid non-answer, and is like compounding the problem of stupid people, like influencing anyone that isn't prepared to come into this and see what's actually happening in the discussion. Any type of ego-driven person that wants there to be like these dunks on the question are going to see it as a dunk on the question, even though everything that's been responded with so far can be like deconstructed. I stopped keeping track of this, so whoops. So there are 2, 3 more. We're at 16. 16 answers. 16 responses. Anyone asking is someone I obviously don't need to deal with. Well, so you just dismiss them. You just isolate them as a form of abuse. So my answer is I can't. I must be corrupt morally and shouldn't be spoken to. That's the type of thing that a psychopath says. Psychopaths have conditioned people into thinking that that's like the type of smug response that you could maybe take as a joke. Like, nope, they're actually morally corrupt and shouldn't be spoken to. Their entire response is pathological. You just ignore them. I'm not going to pay attention to you. So you can't answer the question? That's what we're getting so far. For every single response, we're in 17 responses in, and every single response you could reply with, so you don't have an answer to the question, and it would be a perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable response. It would be relevant to what they said, because they don't have an answer. They keep trying to make it seem like they have an answer, but that's what pathological people do. When they don't have an answer, they make it seem like they have an answer. Anyone asking is someone I obviously don't need to deal with. So it's a counterattack, a non-answer, self-admittance that they're a scumbag. Not from an imaginary being that condones slavery, misogyny, homophobia, and genocide. Okay, but then where from? The question is, where do you get it from? The question isn't, can you make it seem like religion is stupid? That's not what the question was. This is a counterattack and a non-answer. I just quote Penn Jillette. Oh. We don't even really have to go through this because we already know what the quote is. Even if it's not exactly what the quote is. We can kind of, yep, and then there's the end of the quote, so it's not going to be anything more than that. So it's just copying Penn Jillette. A lot of people copy what some dumbass celebrity said, or what like even a smart celebrity said. I would say that Penn Jillette is likely a smart person, but in this instance was being a dumbass, because this is not an answer. The question I get asked by religious people all the time is, without God, what's to stop me from sexually assaulting all I want? And my answer is, I do sexually assault all I want, and the amount I want is 0. And I do murder all I want, the amount I want is 0. The fact that these people think that if they didn't have this person watching over them, that they would go on killing, they didn't say that. No one said that. So Penn Jillette is panicking. This response is panic. the fact that they think this, they don't think that. They're asking you how you determine your moral compass without religion. That's not saying that you would be doing terrible, immoral things because you don't have religion. The question practically assumes that you do have a way of determining morality without religion. It just doesn't provide that answer for you. This is not an answer from Pendulette. This person quotes the wiki. Let's look at the wiki. It's a wiki. Hopefully the wiki isn't going to treat it like a counterattack. Morality is not something given by a god. Oh, it's immediately a counterattack. Even the wiki has someone's ego in it, and then copying. For instance, Buddhists follow the 5 precepts. Like, okay, so is that how you determine your morality? The question is how you determine your morality. The question isn't like, give me some shit you copied from somebody else that'll make it sound like you understand morality. And it certainly isn't counterattack the concept of God because you don't have an answer. And then it isn't, don't explain to me these like loose definitions of morality in an overly verbose explanation to make it seem like you understand it. Consequentialism, deontology, so like more copying, Buddhist precepts, deontology, consequentialism, counterattack. The existence of God is not contingent on who takes a theist or atheist position. Like this is all ego. This isn't an answer. This person like just copies from the wiki, and it's not an answer. So like that other person previously that was like, if we get things from someone that is a bad person, then we'll end up doing bad things. Like that's literally what they're doing. That's what all of these people are doing. It's like copying bad answers, and they go a bad route as a result. Hello, reformist trick. I see you. Alright, so copying and a counterattack with an unacceptable answer. Or rather with potential but incomplete answers. Like maybe deontology and consequentialism could get us there, but even just quickly skimming over the explanation that was given in this wiki was really just explaining to you what those concepts are and not how they determine your moral compass. So it's not a satisfactory answer. It's incomplete at best. The same place Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. The same place, more copying. And they all lived before Jesus and knew relatively little about Judaism. Okay, so at this point we can see that there's more. Without reading that there's more, we should anticipate that this person is going to give us the explanation of where those people got their moral compass from. If we were having a conversation with somebody and they started with that response, then we should likely give them tempo to continue their explanation because we have not received an explanation yet. It's pretty simple. Oh, when someone starts talking like that, it's a gigantic red flag. They're being arrogant. It's pretty simple, actually. It's pretty simple. I know I would T like something. There's a typo here, so we'll have to try and figure out what they're trying to say. I know I would T not like something. I know I would like something, so why would I suggest another to that? Oh, I know I would not like something, so why would I subject another to that thing? If one can do this, they're a flaming asshole, and if they think people would be void of morals, it's because that's what they want and they're just projecting. Okay, so this person is projecting, even the concept of projecting onto other people, but they sort of refer to, you can look at it as either the harm principle or the golden rule, but I'm going to look at it as the golden rule because the golden rule includes both. So the golden rule is treat others how you would want to be treated. Don't treat others how you would not want to be treated. So they like loosely refer to that and they counterattack. So it's important to acknowledge this difference. So I'm gonna I'm going to make a difference here of unrealized golden rule and the golden rule, realized golden rule, unrealized golden rule, and then I'm going to explain to you what the distinction is here. So the golden rule, I already explained that part. What I mean by unrealized golden rule is that everything else this person says demonstrates that they don't actually understand this concept of don't do things to other people that you wouldn't want done to yourself. Because they also egotistically counterattack the person asking the question and project onto them a bunch of things that they didn't do, which is not something that this person would want done to them. So they don't actually understand the concept that they just brought into the equation. That's how I know it's unrealized. If it was realized, then they would have explained something similar to the golden rule. They don't have to say that it's the golden rule. Like, you could realize it on your own, and people do. I realized the golden rule on my own without being told about the golden rule, and then found out that there was a name for it. You could do that, but this person doesn't actually understand it. Likely what they did was they copied it from someone else that did, or another person that copied it. But they're too egotistical to like hold on to that, so they still counterattack by projecting. If they think people would be void of morals, like nobody said that, that's what they want, and they're just projecting. It's a counterattack. Then they're like appealing to authority here. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Is this what Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle did? Was like loosely understand the golden rule? I doubt it. I really doubt it. I don't need my mom or dad to tell me right from wrong as an adult, and I don't need God to do it either. Okay. I can accept that premise, but that's not an answer. You don't need your mom or dad, and you don't need God. So then how did you determine it without them? That's literally what the fucking question is. This isn't an answer. I don't need my mom or dad to tell. It's an arrogant answer. An arrogant non-answer. Non-answers, 14. We're 21 in. We have, like, at best, maybe, like, one response that we could look at as being close to the golden rule, which is, like, not even an actual answer, but I'll explain when somebody else gets to the golden rule. From Blue of Ol, 1. Treat people as I would wish to be treated. There's the golden rule. 2. Follow the law except where it contradicts the first law. Okay, so law doesn't determine morality. Dang, it was going for a 3 laws of robotics thing, but morality isn't that hard. Alright, so this person tries to have like a list, but they couldn't come up with a third thing, and then, oh, dang it, I was going for a 3 laws, so that they admit that they couldn't figure out a third thing, so really this part we can just ignore. This part, like they're telling us to ignore the third one. This part is not relevant to the question. Law and morality are not the same thing. Treat people as I would wish to be treated. So that's the golden rule. So I'll put this in realized golden rule. They might not realize it, but there's no indication it's unrealized. And then I'm going to explain the problem with this. What we have so far is a person that understands the golden rule, but doesn't have any other method of determining morality. And you can't actually determine morality with just the golden rule. The golden rule is as they're saying, treat people as I would wish to be treated. But sometimes people want to be treated different than how you want to be treated. So only understanding the golden rule, being limited to the golden rule, is the type of mindset that a narcissist has. You need to have more than the golden rule. You need to like triangulate towards morality with more than one concept. With just the golden rule, and like only half of the golden rule, treat people as I would wish to be treated. You also have to not treat people the way that you would not to be want to be treated. And that's not a complete understanding of morality. So this is an unacceptable answer. You have to have more than that. Otherwise, you just have like, you're going to treat everybody how you would want to be treated. So you run into a scenario where like, this doesn't have to do with morality, but as an example, if you use the same type of thinking with food, someone's like, oh, I don't have any food. Can you like get me some food? Like a homeless person. And then you're like, oh man, I really like Burger King. Or you're like going on a date. And you're like, oh, I really like Burger King, so that's where we're going to go. You don't like ever consider asking the person what they want. You never try to find out what they want because you think it's perfectly fine to be like, what I want, that's what everyone wants. That's how a vain person operates. That's selfish thinking that you could have just that and that's all you have for guiding your morality. They think that maybe otherwise following law, but like it's obvious that law and morality are not the same thing. So they have... Oh, I guess it's a potential but incomplete answer. Not an unacceptable answer. If you need the threat of eternal punishment to do good things, you're not a good person. That may be true, but you didn't answer the fucking question. The question is, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? This person did not answer the question. They did a sneaky sociopath job of making it seem like they answered the question, but all they really did was, oh, you're worse than me. That must mean that maybe I'm a good person then? No. The type of person that responds this way can't answer the question. That's why they respond this way. They're trying to distract from the realization that they don't have an answer to the question. They're not even only trying to distract you, they're also trying to distract themselves from this subconscious realization that's creeping up on them that they're not as smart, they're not as good of a person as they advertise themselves as, and as they see themselves as. If you need the threat of eternal punishment, nobody said that. Counterattack, false dichotomy, we're 22 in. Non-answer. Quote Rust Cole from True Detective. If the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, then brother, that person is a piece of shit. Alright, so now we're starting to get maybe an idea of where people are copying this. If you need the promise of eternal damnation, that like maybe they're getting that from, they're just taking this Rust Cole from True Detective quote, and then they're all copying it and rearranging it to make it sound like their own thing. Because this is practically the same thing as the last response. If you need the threat of eternal punishment, if the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, that's the same thing. It's, you need motivation in order to be a good person. And if you need motivation to be a good person, then you're not a good person. It's the same idea. So, in this case, we know specifically that it's actually copying someone. So, we'll put Rust Cole... Wait, how do they spell it? Rust Cole quote. We're at 1. Non-answer... Counterattack, false dichotomy. This is a false dichotomy because it presents the idea that the person asking the question, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from, is suggesting that you can't have a moral compass without religion, even though that isn't actually suggested by the question. It's being projected onto people that would ask the question to distract and digress and to make them look bad. Empathy. Oh, are they going to explain what empathy is in this next sentence? Or are they just going to say the word empathy and then hope that you thought that they know what that means, like most people do? If the only thing preventing you from hurting people is a book saying not to, then you're a sociopath. Okay, so we have the same exact thing. So, this is like what I was saying before. about how you need to pay attention to the like flow of where the counterattacks are occurring. So a person gives an answer that's a potential but incomplete answer with empathy. That might be the answer. When we get to the end, I might explain how that's relevant when I give the answer to this question. But this person doesn't understand that answer. They're copying that answer. They think it'll make them look good. Most sociopaths say the thing that they think will get them the result that they want, that they saw other people do and get away with. They don't actually understand the concepts coming out of their mouth. So they just say the word empathy, and then they hope that you'll fall for that. If you try to ask them to explain empathy, then they'll try to fish for answers. They'll try to suggest that it isn't. They'll try to suggest that you're a bad person. Because if you need an explanation for what empathy is, it's like, no, I'm trying to make sure that you understand what empathy is because you didn't explain it. And if you're going to invoke empathy as an explanation, then you better fucking explain how it's relevant. But they're not explaining how it's relevant because they don't understand how it's relevant. So a potential but incomplete answer, a counterattack, a false dichotomy, and a potential but incomplete answer. So empathy is a selfless regard for another's perspective, and the emotional signaling experienced while considering other people's emotional state in one's conscience. Most people have no idea about the second part. They're just faking their way through everything, copying what sounds good. If I say empathy, then it makes me sound like I have humility and compassion. But they can never explain it. And they say stupid things instead, like, empathy is putting yourself in other people's shoes. That's not an explanation for empathy. That's vanity. That's literally the opposite of empathy. You're just ignoring the person and instead substituting yourself and your own history and your own decision making and not them. It's just you and their circumstances. That's egotistical. That's narcissism. That's not empathy. That's how most people explain empathy. They copied that explanation because it works. But it works up until you get to a person like me that can explain to you how it's not empathy. Someone who actually understands empathy. This person doesn't understand empathy. So then they start to panic after they give that response, and they immediately counterattack with a false dichotomy. Their subconscious is aware. You don't know what this means. So then their subconscious makes them blurt out that realization. But you have to actually pay attention a little bit to see that it's there. If the only thing preventing you from hurting people, and then it helps to see that all of the so many of these other people did the same thing. Where they're counterattacking, and then you start to see that these really are a lot of the same response. Ask your friend why their moral compass condones slavery, and if they disagree with slavery, how is their moral compass really moral? Are they picking and choosing like everyone else? So this is just a counterattack and a non-answer. A lot of the internet is like this, and not only a lot of the internet now, but a lot of how people talk in real life. And if you don't let them do these stupid gimmicks that try to make other people look bad so that they can maybe have the illusion of looking like they understand what they're doing, then they get really upset at you, and then they abuse you by isolating you and getting other people to isolate you. They don't have an answer to the question. Why does someone answer the question, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? Why do they answer that with, ask your friend why their moral compass condones slavery? Because they don't have an answer to the question. Why do they flip it and turn it on the other person? Because they don't have an answer to the question. And it makes it look like they have an answer to the question if they flip it on the person. It distracts you. You sit there and consider what they're saying, and you sit there and you fall for that trap, then you'll be trying to explain to them how it makes sense or whatever. But the reality is that you need to understand that you're getting off topic. The topic is, how do they know? How does Soggy Midnight 980 know how to determine their moral compass? And the answer is they don't fucking know, which is why they didn't answer the fucking question. Tell them it comes from your ethical nature, and that anyone who only does the right thing out of fear of hell is nothing but evil and a leash. This is a lot of the same people. a lot of the people in here are saying the same thing. And they're counterattacking a neutral question that in no way implied the attack on their ego that they're assuming. The question itself, this neutral question, destroys their ego, completely shatters the facade of their ego, and then they respond with these counterattacks that are all the same thing, because all pathological people are the same. All they do is copy. All of these responses are copying. Now that we're seeing more and more of the responses, look at this counter. Look at this counter. 25 responses in, 18 counterattacks, 5 false dichotomies, a straw man, 17 non-answers, 4 potential but incomplete answers, 3 Penn Jillette quotes, 1 Russ Cole quote, those are all copying. Just copy what this person said. Maybe that means I know what I'm talking about, that I know who to copy from. An unacceptable answer, disingenuous representation, unrealized golden rule. We have one realized golden rule that we kind of gave to them. And even that's not a complete answer. As I've already said, these people are doing the same thing. Is this safe butterscotch? Did I already read this one? I don't know. Tell them it comes from your ethical nature, and that anyone who only does the right thing out of fear of hell is nothing but evil on a leash. That sounds like they copied it from someone. It's nothing but evil on a leash. Comes from your ethical nature. Oh. The question is to explain this ethical nature. You're just going to imply that you have it. Oh yeah, I have it. I have ethical nature. What does that mean? And then counterattack them. So you don't have an answer, dumbass? Shut the fuck up. This is how people argue on the internet now. And in real life now, too. I suggest you go only with law. Law and morals are not the same thing. Local, regional, national, and international law. Wow, they mentioned so many types of law. Maybe somehow that means they're right. I would go further arguing that not only this is a more ethical and democratic moral guidance, laws are not democratic, but also an intelligent choice sense. Religious doctrine is static and outdated. So is law. You can also educate your friend, make him aware that it's another proof that God doesn't exist. A powerful, omnipotent God would have been able to see into the future and give us guidance on information laws. You don't know that an omnipotent God would be able to see in the future, and you don't know that whatever God this person subscribes to is omnipotent. This person is projecting for the sake of their own ego. They're setting up all this stuff so then they can be like, yeah, see, and I'm right because I set up all these things that I can easily deconstruct. All the straw manning, genetics, engineering laws, and laws on pedophilia committed by priests against innocent children. Hope this helps. No, you don't. This non-answer with this non-answer of counterattacking, straw manning, non-answers. You don't hope this helps. Law, as any other human project, can be unfair or even inspired by theists. So this person actually disagreed with what they said. They pointed out how this part of this is flawed. What moral compass? I just do what I want, and it just happens to be considered by society at large as moral. This is so clearly a non-answer. What moral compass? But it's trying to be cheeky and sound like it maybe provided some type of answer. This isn't an answer at all. I just do what I want. So your moral compass is determined solely by you. It's vanity. And it just happens to be considered by society at large as moral. So explain how you determine what you want to do that you end up doing. that would be an answer to the question. This person doesn't answer the question. They don't have an answer for the question. They imply an answer for the question, and then they fail to answer the question. This is 28 in, and the 20th non-answer. You can be a good person without following the rules of a long-dead cult. You can be a good person without following the rules of a long-dead cult. This is the type of statement that a lot of pathological people like to use. The type of statement they like to use. Not specifically this one, but they like this type of statement. Where they say something that's true that implies that they have a better understanding and that they're superior in some way, but they didn't answer the question. The question is asking you practically, how can you be a good person without following the rules of a long-dead cult? This person just says that you can. They don't actually explain how. Because they don't have an answer. That's why someone answers the question this way. They don't have an answer, but they really want to be perceived as having an answer. So, eventually you should start to get the idea... Oh yeah, they're counterattacking, by the way. A long dead cold. And a false dichotomy that they've projected onto somebody else as representing, plus a non-answer. Basic common sense and human empathy. How do those things help you determine how to get there? That's like someone... This is like another example of how you can't really determine things with one thing. Like, if you're trying to understand math fundamentally, and all you have is one operator, plus, then you can't really determine math for a bunch of reasons. But you can't determine how to subtract. You can't determine the order of operations. You can't determine how to multiply or divide. You don't even know that those are concepts because all you have is plus. So like, how do you solve this equation? With plus? Okay, explain how you solve it with plus. What does that mean? That's the point of the question. Basic common sense and human empathy? You're not answering the question. You're just saying with plus and minus. You're giving with plus and multiply. You're not giving an answer to the question. And then it can be demonstrated again. Even if the question only has plus, you still need more than one thing. Because you can't explain how addition works without explaining numbers. So in order to explain one thing, you need to always have at least two things. That's with everything. These people aren't giving answers. They're like suggesting maybe. So this is another potential but incomplete answer. How does human empathy help us determine a moral compass? That's what the question is. You're giving us this person is giving us the idea that there is an answer, but they're not actually explaining to us that answer. 30 in. 5 potential but incomplete answers. Complete answers I'll add at the bottom of this. Even though we don't have any yet. But we know that there will be one at the end. That's what I'm promising to give you by the end. But we first have to see the makeup of all of these bad non-answers before me giving you an answer will make sense, or else you might make the mistake of just taking what I say and being like, yeah, now I believe that, because you're gonna be like, wow, that's really fucking smart, because everyone that I've told it to has been like, oh shit, I don't know anything about morals. Like, I just got dunked on. He wasn't even dunking on me. Because people are assuming they understand things. They practice retroactive wisdom. I don't want to set you up to practice retroactive wisdom. I want you to see, like, is this how you respond to things? This is a failure in response. The way that these people are responding is a failure in response. And if you respond in the same ways, you need to realize that other people are failing in the same way. You need to realize how these are failures, which is why I'm explaining them to you. And then I can give you an actual answer. I'll also give you an explanation of what people are really saying when they refer to like religious teachings and the golden rule. It's like the same thing, actually. It's just the difference is dependency on religion, being taught by religion or not. But I'm not going to say that now because I want you to understand the difference between having that understanding and not having that understanding. So first you need to be in this emotional and mental space where you're like, there's something else that he's going to tell me about, but I don't have that understanding yet. And these people aren't giving that understanding, even though they might have seemed like they were answers to you if you didn't have me telling you like how they're so easily deconstructed. NetDork says, if you need the threat of eternal punishment to make you a good person, you're not a good person. Hell, if the Bible is your source of morality, then you're fine with slavery and sexual assault and infanticide, genocide. So, counterattacking, false dichotomy, non-answer. Does this person explain how they're able to determine how to be a good person? No, they just insist that other people aren't good people with their counterattack. And they do that because they don't have an answer. We can see that more as we see more answers. Is your fear of God the only thing keeping you from doing terrible things? Oh, again, the same thing. Put it back on them. Put it back on them because you don't have an answer. That's why you would counterattack like that. You're not being attacked. These people are not being attacked by the question that's on the left here that is the original post. If you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? These people are not being attacked by that concept, but they treat it like an attack because they're so egotistical that the question exposes them subconsciously, makes them realize they don't understand. They like dropped having religious teachings. They're like, that's gone. And they're like, this is fine. I just have nothing to guide me morally. And then someone goes like, so how do you guide yourself morally? And they're like, ah! Ah! They're like all doing this. They're all doing that. You're only behaving morally because your religion tells you to do so? Oh. Pathological people like to do that too. When they're like implying things about other people, they ask it because they have to. There's like a reason for why they have to. Which I've explained in other videos and stuff, but it's like important to understand. If you don't want to be a pathological scumbag or be like them or become them, don't ask your statements. Make your statements. If you can't make your statement, then consider what it is that's holding you back from making it. That's not morality, that's obedience. This like obedience line seems to be a really common one. They're obedient. So they probably copied that from someone else. There's like some psychopath going around being like, they're just obedient. Oh, you're only behaving that way because what? So counterattack, false dichotomy, non-answer that they copied from someone else because it worked for them. And I think I need to increment this once. My reply, so your fear of hell, oh my god, it's the same fucking thing. Your fear of hell is the only thing stopping you from raping and murdering me? So long as it's not Sunday? What else is going on that I should know about while slowly backing away? Well, good one, Jenny, on the spot. So, I mentioned before a lot of times that laughter is amusement is only a subconscious acknowledgement of new understanding. Laughter signals the halfway point to learning consciously. You're getting there, but you're not there. That's why you're laughing. So this type of joke, slowly back away. It's only funny until you realize that scumbags have copied it over and over and over again. It's actually not funny. There's nothing humorous about it. You're just learning how a sociopath operates. A sociopath operates by copying jokes and by copying at large. Slowly back away. Nope, it's not funny at all. They use tricks like that because they don't fundamentally understand anything that they're talking about. But they want to coerce you into it. They want to manipulate you into thinking that they understand what they're talking about. So they copy things that work for other people that will get them the result that they want. They're all doing that. So your fear of hell is the only thing stopping you. So they're copying that too. If you don't want to become an evil retard, don't copy things other people said. Come up with your own thing. That's like another lesson that's like important to realize as we're going through all of these copycat responses that are all counterattacks and false dichotomies projected onto other people and non-answers. I think that's the most common so far, is like a combination of counterattack, false dichotomy, and non-answer. Or counterattack and non-answer. One definition of morality is what you do when you think no one is watching. Christians think that their God is always watching. Therefore, only atheists can have morals. Oh, whoops, a comparison and a counterattack. Oh, no. So why do they counterattack? Well, they give this answer, and then they counterattack. So what's this answer? One definition of morality is what you do when you think no one is watching. This isn't enough. So we can put this under potential but incomplete answers. What do you do when you think no one is watching? We might be able to determine some aspects of morality from that. We might be able to like increase our ability to guide ourselves morally with like a moral compass, as the question is asking, by considering the premise of what you would do when no one is watching. What you do when no one is watching and what you do when people are watching should be the same if you are a moral person. And we can maybe get somewhere with that. But it's not enough. And it's like made even more clear by the fact that they said that it's one definition. It's not even a definition. It's like one consideration for morality. And after they have that answer that is not a full answer, when they don't provide an answer, they counterattack. So their like ego is flaring up. They're like, oh, they're like so mad that they don't have an answer to the question. So then they try to make someone else look bad. A lot of egotistical people do that. I think I didn't increment this. Counterattack. Christians think that their God is always watching, therefore only atheists can have morals. That can be broken down into a different false dichotomy than the one that we've already seen. It's interesting. It's like a nonsense conclusion. If you need religion to be moral, you are a bad person. You're a bad person, I'm sure is what they meant to say. We've seen that so many times. So we know that there isn't some other understanding about being bad people. They're counterattacking, false dichotomy, non-answer. Wow, there are so many of these. If you read this type of thread before, if you've read and you're honest with yourself, if you didn't understand these things before, then you might have come in and if you wanted to like dismiss the question because you don't have an answer, then you might have seen these answers as legitimate. But we can see that these answers are not legitimate at all. The fact that atheists have morals proves morals do not come from God. Okay, it does suggest that atheists have morals, but all you've said is that you have morals. You haven't explained how you determine your moral compass, which is the actual question. This is a non-answer. And it's part of the false dichotomy. It's not really a counterattack like a lot of the other ones have been, but it is a non-answer. They implied an answer. They didn't provide an answer. A better place than religious people get theirs. Well, what is the place then, asshole? Well, you're so moral that you understand how to be moral, so much more moral than other people, but you're not going to help anybody understand it. You're just going to make a cheeky, resentful, petty comment that like tries to bring them down. You don't have an answer then. The type of person that does that does not have an answer. The counterattacking, non-answer. I don't know. I guess I'm just not a monster. That's not an explanation. It's almost... This person, like, almost is humble. This is an acceptable answer to give, by the way. I don't know. That's okay. That's a really good starting point to figuring out. Because in order for you to figure out a moral compass outside of religion, you would have to concede. You would have to have the humility and the selfless attitude and vibe to be able to admit that you don't know. But then this person tries to assume the position anyway. I guess I'm just not a monster. You guess you're just not a monster? Sounds like something a monster would say. Or they want to imply that they're not one. So we have a non-answer. TWSA, Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller answered this 10 years ago. No, he did not. With the same Penn Jillette answer, that isn't an answer. The fact that these people think that if they didn't have the person watching over them, that they would be able to go on killing and sexually assaulting, they don't think that. They're just asking the question, where do you get your moral compass from without religion? What Penn Jillette has done has projected onto them motive. This motive that he's assuming is not necessary. So we have more copying. 42. For Penn Jillette quote 4. Penn Jillette has been quoted 4 times even though his quote doesn't make sense. It's pretty simple. That's a red flag. People that talk like that are always copying. If you point out to them that they're copying and like that a lot of pathological people act like that, they'll realize like, oh shit, that makes sense actually. It's pretty simple. Do I want to be murdered? No. Okay, so it sounds like they're going to the golden rule. Let's see where they go with this. Do I want to be murdered? No. So I don't murder other people. Do I want other things? Do I want things stolen from me? No. So I don't steal from other people. Do I want to be lied to? No. So I don't lie to other people. And on and on. There will always be some gray areas for some. E.g. death penalty, where you need to understand the context of a specific situation. However, so it's not pretty simple? However, I have generally found the don't be a dick rule to work pretty well. That's the same thing as the golden rule that they just summarized above. So, however, but this isn't the right time for a however, you're not adding anything new. I don't need an old book curated 2,000 years ago to tell me how to treat others. Oh, and a counterattack. So, they have the unrealized golden rule. They don't have their ego in check. So they couldn't just stick to that. Their response could have been everything up to, however, I have generally found the don't be a dick rule to work pretty well. And then we could maybe come to the conclusion, despite the red flag, the one red flag at the top of it, it's pretty simple. And maybe the copying that could be acceptable, could be fine. They don't realize that they're copying with, and on and on. It's pretty simple. But once we get to the counterattack at the end, it's like they have to do it. It's like they have to admit to you in some way that they don't actually know what the fuck they're talking about. So then they have to take some pot shot at, I guess the Bible in this case. The New Testament Bible in this case. So they counterattack. Unrealized golden rule. So there are layers of understanding. There's toddlers. They're toddlers right here. Goo goo gaga. And then there's most of these scumbags that we're seeing. They're way down here. They're if you need a threat of the children nation or divine, those people are below goo goo gaga. And then above goo goo gaga is someone who seems to understand the golden rule and references it, but doesn't truly understand it. Then there's a person that understands the golden rule, but doesn't understand that it's not a complete understanding of morality or empathy, because the golden rule helps you with both of those things. And then above that, there's more understanding. But we can see these layers in these responses. Except for the last one. The last one I'm going to give you at the end. I'm not going to go through all of these responses, but I am going to go through a lot of them. I'm going to go through at least triple digits. so that no one can like falsely summarize what we've done here. No one can say that like I wasn't fair or that I was cherry picking. I'm going through the first 100 that this stupid fucking Reddit site serves me, and it's largely based on what was upvoted. We see like a bunch of 2s, which means that either the author or someone else was upvoting everything that they're seeing that is like in alignment with what they believe or what they want to believe. So eventually we're going to run out of things that anyone has commented on or upvoted, and then I'll try to dig into seeing if there are things that have like negative votes or are controversial. Morals and deities are not connected. Okay, no one said that they were. If Zeus told you to sexually assault and kill your child, you would not do it because you know that it is not something you should do. That's circular logic. You don't do bad things because you know not to do bad things. That's circular logic. The person has copied the premise as their supposed understanding for the premise. That's their answer for the question. They've just copied the question. Because you know it's something you shouldn't do. How do you know? That's the fucking question that's being asked. If you do think that it's what you should do, you have no morals. Alright, well, we're not talking about not having morals. We're talking about how you determine you have morals. And this person doesn't provide that. 44. With a non-answer. I find a quote or variations of from True Detective Works from Wes Cole. If the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, then brother, that person is a piece of shit. And I'd like to get as many of them out in the open as possible. Oh, so now they're like virtue signaling too? They're like, yeah, get them out in the open. Even though you're like an idiot that can't explain how to determine morality, so instead you like deflect by making other people look worse. Yeah, get those other people out in the open so that you can seem like a hero. You gotta get together and tell yourself stories that violate every law of the universe just to get through the goddamn day. No one's doing that. This part of the quote wasn't in the other one that we saw. This was a disingenuous representation. You gotta get together and tell yourself stories every day, and those stories violate every law of the universe every goddamn day. That's how a fucking stupid person talks. Every day? No, you don't. Why are they asking instead of stating it? Because they're lying. What's that say about your reality? Why are they asking instead of saying? Because they're lying. That's how pathological people talk. These people love a quote from a character that's demonstrating pathological behaviors. 45 in. A counterattack. Now we understand, not only is this a false dichotomy, not only is it a non-answer, it's a Russ Cole quote, and with more that has been shared with this quote is also disingenuous representation. How many complete and acceptable answers have we seen? 0. We've seen 45 responses from people that think that they're morally and intellectually superior to atheists, and all we're seeing, or to theists, and all we're seeing is that these atheists that think that they're superior actually are subconsciously aware of how inferior they are, and their ego makes them lash out and attack an invisible question. Astromancer says, you'll notice how the question is never, and I do mean never. Oh, they're really winding this up so that it seems like they're going to make a good point. It's a really big red flag when somebody starts talking in that way. And I do mean never. They like copied that from a show or something. If you aren't my specific domination of my specific religion, the only one that's actually true and correct, it's always religion in general. That's not a problem. They're not even bringing up religion in general. They're bringing up the idea of not having religion and answering the question. This is like, actually the question is a question devoid of religion. This person thinks they made a really good point. That's because they know they can't get away with saying that. All but the tiny fraction of humans that belong to the actually correct religion that they do have no morals. No, it's not. This is all made up, disingenuous representation. They're hoping that you don't notice that they've also said people whose religions are entirely human sourced can also have morals. Because then you'd be like, hey, wait, my morals are also entirely human sourced. So what's the difference between my morals, which apparently can't exist, and the morals of someone who follows a false religion, which apparently can't exist? No one said your morals can't exist. You made that up. This person has made that up. They've projected onto the question. That was never said. Here's the question. Here's the entirety of the original post. Copied from my phone. Because the original post has been removed, so you can't see this part in the description that says, the reason I asked this is because my friend at school asked me this when I said I'm starting to feel more atheist. And I make sure to have this so that you can see that these people are adding shit to the question that was never there. So what's the difference between my morals, which apparently can't exist? No one said that. You just assumed that because it would make it easier for you to have this like completely false straw man argument. This isn't just a problem with our atheism. I'm going to keep saying that so it's clear. These problems are not problems with just our atheism. There are so many dumbasses that operate this way, and so many people fall for it. So this is disingenuous representation. That, and how did you decide your God was the good one of the stories? You made a moral choice without your religion, the choice to accept that religion in the first place. Maybe they did have a way of determining it without their God. The question is, how do you determine it without your God? Not, can you turn this question around on me since you can't answer it? Dumbass. Never mind that they probably didn't make that choice. It was chosen for them before they could actually think. They won't admit they didn't make a choice that they won't admit they didn't make a choice that, so there's no harm in holding the choice against them. Alright, so ignoring whatever typo is in there, what they're trying to say is they won't admit that they didn't make a choice, but they still don't realize there's no harm in holding the choice against them because they didn't make the choice. But it's an ongoing choice. This is a completely false premise. You didn't make that choice. That choice was handed down to you. The religion that you subscribe to is handed down to you. Like, that's true. So at the time, the genesis of the choice is that it was handed down to you, but ongoing, you're continuing to make that choice. This is trying to assert the idea that you're not making that choice ongoing, which is false. I'd like to use an example. Alright, cool. So we should expect that this person is going to give us an example of what? Of, if you don't have a religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? That's what they should be giving us. I am morally opposed to an adult man marrying a 9-year-old. That's a very specific example. In some religions, that's okay. Oh, it's just a counterattack. Oh, it's just another counterattack. I didn't need a religious book to tell me that's wrong. So they're not going to explain to us with an example. They're not going to explain to us and answer the question. They're just going to use the opportunity to counterattack because they don't have an answer. In fact, if I followed a particular religious book, that would be morally okay. So I guess you could say I take measure of an act's impacts on society. You could say you measure an act's impact on society. That's a potential but incomplete answer. I can't get from what they've given us to an actual answer. And also, this isn't the example that they send me. They use the example to counterattack. And at the very end, they try to like put something together, just throw something together, jerry-rig it together to make it seem like they even answer. But we need more information than this. Like, and so do they. That's why they guess. Measuring an act. So you're gonna have an act. You're gonna act out. What impact does it have on society? And measuring that to determine morality. And that's not a complete answer for multiple reasons. One, we're looking for a moral compass. Like a compass guides you before you get there. We're looking for a moral compass. We're not looking for a retroactive understanding, like, what impact did this have on this? Because we're trying to figure out how you're morally correct instead of being morally incorrect or being immoral. So this method of looking at the impact on society can only be done retroactively. It's not an answer. And then on top of that, the impact on society, that's not like complete. The impact on society is so vague. We're trying to determine morals, but the impact that an act can have on society can be outside of the bounds of morality. You'd be like, this had an impact on whoever people, this act that I did impacted this person, but like, that doesn't have to do with morality. Like, I ate this apple, that impacted everybody else's opportunity to eat that apple. But that's not you being immoral, and that's not you being moral either. So, this is I'll say it's a potential but incomplete answer. That's as much as I can give them. But also they're counterattacking. So much counterattacking. They're like trying to attack God, even though they don't believe in it. I like Penn Jillette's response. When someone asked him why it's not blah blah blah, he said, I have the number of 1 to 0. Alright, so copying Penn Jillette, even though his response isn't an actual answer to the question. Penn Jillette quote. It's a counterattack. Morality predates so-called organized religion. Alright. So then, clearly, the rest of what this person says is going to explain to us how it was determined without religion. Unless they're a sociopath that just wanted us to assume that they have that understanding. If we did not have an inbuilt sense of morality, civilization would never have started. Okay, so you're saying we have an inbuilt sense of morality, but you're not going to explain what it is? Then you don't understand what it is. This person isn't providing an answer. Hello, boy-ish mathematician. Welcome. I see you. So that's response number 49. Response number 49 is a non-answer. Like, what they say is correct. Or, like, we could be like, yeah, before religion, there was probably morality. But that's what we're trying to figure out with the question. How do you respond to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? This person has copied the answer. They're providing circular logic. Well, I guess they're not giving us circular logic. They're just giving us the question itself is practically being served back to us, and they're pretending that it's an answer. But while we're here, separate from this question, we had circular logic earlier, and I forgot to like note that. So I'll put it under strawman is circular logic. Was earlier one of the responses from this post was, you know to be a good person. You know not to do a bad thing because you know to be good. Like, that's circular logic. There's no explanation of how you're determining how to be good. The question I get asked by religious... Oh, it's the Penn Jillette quote. Oh, here's Penn Jillette being quoted again. Since you just joined us, boyish mathematician.
I'll answer why. I'll give my answer for this part, why this doesn't make sense again. So the reason why this isn't an answer to the question, I'll first read the quote. The question I get asked by religious people all the time is, without God, what's to stop me from raping all I want? And my answer is, I do rape all I want, and the amount I want is zero. And I do murder all I want, and the amount I want is zero. The fact that these people think that if they didn't have this person watching over them, that they would go on killing, rampaging, and it is the most self-damning thing I can imagine. I don't want to do that right now without any God. I don't want to jump across this table and strangle you. I have no desire to strangle you. I have no desire to flip you over and sexually assault you. This isn't an answer to the question. The question I get asked from people is, what stops you from doing terrible things? What is your moral compass? Same as the question in the op that we're exploring. And their answer is to say that they're demonstrating that they have some way of determining morality. See, because they're not doing these terrible things. Alright, but that's not an answer to the question. The question is, how are you determining that? And also they have this projection, this assumption they projected onto these people. The fact that these people think that if they didn't have this person watching over them, that they would go on killing. That's not true. They're not saying that. The question never presents that. The question doesn't say, if you don't have religion, that must mean that you're going around murdering people, doesn't it? That's not what the question is. The question is, since you don't have religion, how do you determine morals? And they take extreme liberty with the question to turn it into a completely different thing. And when people do that, it's because they don't have an answer to the question. We're in 50 responses in. We have no complete answers. This one is a counterattack. They're trying to make religion look bad and theists look bad with their answer, but they don't actually explain the answer. It's a false dichotomy because, or they're asserting a false dichotomy on the behalf of the theist. They're being like, so either you have religion and you have morality, or you don't have religion and you don't have morality? No, the question is asking, what else is there? Explain it. But since they don't have a way of answering the question, they instead take this false dichotomy, project it onto the people answering the question, all so that you don't realize that they never answer the question. Oh, whoops. I forgot to increment. How many times have people quoted Penn Jillette? 50 in and 6 quotes from Penn Jillette. So more than 10% of the responses have been quoting Penn Jillette. 12% of the responses have been just, I'll copy this person's response, and it's not a satisfactory response. I just like to be a good person and use common sense and follow the laws of our country. Boom, done. I just like to be a good person. That's literally what the fucking question is. The fucking question is, how do you determine being a good person? And use common sense. I'm starting to get the sense that people that say use common sense don't actually understand what that means. Every time I've asked people what they mean by common sense, they can't explain it. They're just like, they just want you to accept that answer instead of ever actually to explain to you what it means. It's practically like an appeal to popularity. It's common, so you should be able to figure it out. I shouldn't have to explain it. So you don't know what it means then? And follow the laws of our country. Laws are not morals. So this person doesn't provide an answer, but they're so egotistical. They're like, boom, done. Boom. Mic drop. Oh, wow. They really showed them by not providing an answer. If this is a friend, don't throw it back at them with stuff like, if you weren't scared of going to hell, would you just be going... don't say with these other people if it's a friend. That doesn't really help that person also consider moving towards atheism. So this person's mind is like a competition to move them towards their lack of belief. Which explains why they're egotistical about it and why they also don't have an answer. They're not concerned with being moral. They're concerned with appearing superior, being on the right side. So they don't actually give an answer. I just like to be a good person. That's circular logic. Well, it's a good thing I just added that one from that previous response. They mentioned the counterattack, they don't make it, so I guess it's we're not going to count that one. But they never really answer the question. Using common sense isn't an answer to the question. It's practically circular logic again, now that I'm thinking about it. And then I agree with them not using this approach, but not for the reasons necessarily that this person explains. This isn't a complete explanation. If you need religion to understand what's right and wrong, you're already... Okay, man. So you don't know? So you don't fucking know? We're 52 answers in, and every single answer that has been given could be replied to with, so you don't have an answer? And it would be irrelevant, it would be acceptable, and it would be a revealing answer. So you don't have an answer? If you need religion to understand what's right and wrong, or if you need to counterattack to distract people from the fact that you don't understand what you're saying, then maybe you need to try and figure out a different way of thinking about things. That's what I'm seeing. I don't need to be told or scared into being a good person, and I leave it at that. So you don't have an explanation? This is the same thing as those other people. I don't need to be told. Okay, no one's saying that you need to be told. We're trying to figure out, without being told, how do you determine? And I'm going to explain that at the end. But these people can't explain it. We're 53 responses in and they can't explain it. I don't need to be told. I don't need to be scared into it. So it's also a counterattack. They're trying to imply that religion scares people into being a good person. So it's bad. That's part of the false dichotomy. They've presented the false dichotomy and projected it as being presented by the theists, even though they bring it up. And I leave it at that. Okay, so you don't answer the question? Wow, so wise. Z34PO. From the 1999 cinematic masterpiece, The Mummy, with Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. Alright, how did that demonstrate it? Or is this just a stupid joke? What we have here is a non-answer, as far as we can tell. We could say it's a potential but incomplete answer. We could say that, but that would be giving them way too much credit. This sounds like, in their panic, they thought it would be funny to digress by talking about an old movie. Good people do good things. That's circular logic. Bad people do bad things. That's circular logic. But to make good people do bad things, it takes religion and a counterattack. So when do the counterattacks occur? When the person can't answer the question. They're like, here's my answer. And then deep down inside in their heart, they're like, fuck, I don't know what I'm talking about. But religion makes good people do bad things. These people feel so exposed from a question that is completely neutral. Good people do good things. Oh, let's find circular logic. Here we go. 3 forms of circular logic. And a counterattack. Not being... okay, so not being a bad person, that's circular logic. We're asking you how to determine to not be a good person. Or rather, the original post is from a person asking, where do you get your moral compass from? That's like asking, how do you determine not being a cunt? That's what it's asking you. You're just going to say the same thing? That's circular logic. This person doesn't have an answer. This is a reflection of how people argue on the internet. It's not even just a reflection of how our atheism argues. It's not just a reflection of how atheists argue. It's not just a reflection of Redditors or people that use the internet. People in real life also argue the same way now. Where they can't answer the question, but they like really want to be perceived as answering the question. I've asked Christians if they found out hell didn't exist, there was no afterlife, would they immediately start sexually assaulting and robbing? Why not? This is just another twist on that false dichotomy. They sometimes put the pieces together. Other times, they think atheists worship Satan, so who knows? They sometimes put the pieces together. That's how a pathological person operates. They can't explain to you, so instead, they just try to get you to put the pieces together. And if you can't put it together, then they try to make it seem like you're doing bad, you're making mistakes, because you can't piece it together. They can't piece it together either. So this whole thing is a counterattack on their part. With the false dichotomy And it's a non-answer. How does this person, Fireman 2004, how does Fireman 2004 determine their moral compass? They didn't explain here. There is no explanation here of how they determine their moral compass. Instead, it's just twisting the entire question back onto the person asking it. That's all they're proposing as an answer, which means that they don't have an answer. That's why there are so many of these stupid fuckheads doing it, because none of them have an answer. A.E. Colley says, the same place that the religions of the world get it from, but without the self-serving exceptions sneaked in. Okay, so it's a counterattack. The same place is copied from them, but with a counterattack too. So another egotistical response. So does this person know or not? They don't know. There's no chance that they know. If they knew, they wouldn't be counterattacking. They wouldn't be wasting all this time trying to make themselves seem superior if they actually understood. Counterattack. Just non-answer and disingenuous representation. Without the self-serving exception sneaked in. What self-serving exceptions? Holy shit, are you telling me the only reason you're not hurting others for fun is some superstitions? Alright, we're back to the same. So many responses are the same. What are you, a psychopath? Why do they ask this? Because they can't state it, since it's not true. 59 in. We have psychopaths projecting being a psychopath onto innocent people because they can't answer a neutral question. There's a counterattack, a false dichotomy, a non-answer, all of it accomplished through copying. The golden rule. Oh, we have a reference to the golden rule. Oh my god, we're at 60 now. We've had 2 loose references but unrealized references to the golden rule, and we've had 1 realized golden rule reference, and this might be the second. The golden rule is where my morals come from. Okay. Treat others the way you want them to treat you. That is practically the golden rule. It also includes don't treat others the way you wouldn't want to be treated. This idea predates both Judaism and Christianity by a lot. I don't need a sky daddy to tell me not to steal. Oh, I don't need that thing, so it still has a counterattack. Why does it have a counterattack? Because this person has an unrealized golden rule. So their morals come from the idea that they wouldn't treat that they treat other people the way they want to be treated. Do they want to be treated as if they're saying things that they're not saying? Because that's what this person is doing. I don't need a sky daddy to tell me not to steal and lie and kill people. Like, nobody said that. So if they're actually following the golden rule, then they wouldn't be doing that because they don't want to be represented that way. If I was like, oh, this person said that they love midget porn, like, they wouldn't like that because they just made that up. Just like they made this up to add it to the thing. The sky daddy. But they still did it, so it's unrealized golden rule. So you're like closer to the idea of someone understanding the concept. We're like closer to someone considering the actual question, but they're so vain that they don't actually do it. They're unrealized golden rule. And we know that it's unrealized because of their counterattack. They could have just said, the golden rule is where my morals come from. Treat others the way you want them to treat you. This idea predates... They don't even need to include that part. That part's like leading up to the counterattack. It's like, look, this is... You don't need religion or whatever. Like, you don't even need to mention that. The golden rule is independent of religion. It's universal. Treat others the way you want to treat them. They could have just had that. They maybe could have expanded on that. But instead they went into counterattack mode because underlying in their subconscious is the realization that they don't know what they're talking about. We're going to get to at least 100. So we're past halfway through. Empathic reciprocity. Also, don't be a psycho or jerk. Empathic reciprocity. So just like reciprocating empathy. Is that what this person's trying to say? That's not determining morals. This might help, but we would need like more of an explanation. Also, don't be a psycho or jerk. That is circular logic. So we have like, with the 61st response, circular logic and a potential but incomplete answer from I don't read fine print. Ha! Morals from religion. Or when someone starts talking like this, it's a bad sign. This isn't like a direct conversation which is what they're copying from. Huh! Morals from religion. Huh. When someone starts talking like that, if you realize you start talking like that, you want to check yourself. That's how a pathological scumbag talks. They copied how somebody else's delivery went, and they try to use that to make what they're going to say sound like it makes sense. Ha! Morals from religion. Don't get me started. Even more. You've heard all of those. They've just strung together like 3 different soundboarded sounds. Read the Old Testament and tell me what is moral from any page. And then they counterattack. So they don't have an answer. Morals, don't get me started. Why? Because you can't answer the question? And then they counterattack. Where's this non-answer? Non-answer? 42 non-answers. From the intellectuals that are atheism. Usually I say something like, this is also a bad sign. We have to realize that this context, the reason I asked this is because my friend at school asked me this when I said I'm starting to feel more atheist. How do you respond to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? This isn't a topic or conversation that happens often enough for someone to have a usually response. So when someone says that, another example of the same vain concept is someone's like, I've always said, no one even knows who you are. You're a fucking random person, the username malted bacon on Reddit. No one knows what you usually do, but it's because they're in a circumstance where you can't disprove them that they're like, well, maybe it's plausible that I do usually say something like this. And then it's important to note that when you see this type of thing, you will always see some kind of bullshit that follows it up. I refine my moral bearings based on a strong motivation to live a life worth living. Alright, so far we don't have an explanation. We have their motivation for being able to determine their moral compass. So we would hope that following this up would be where they got to due to that motivation. I want to be perceived to be a person of integrity and to be respected by others. That is a gigantic red flag. If you start talking like that, you want to check yourself too. I want to be perceived to be a person of integrity, so you don't want to be a person of integrity? That's how a pathological person phrases it. I want to be perceived as a good person. Like, rather than saying, I want to be a good person, they say they want to be perceived that way. And then they'll project that on everybody else. So that's how everybody wants to act. No, that's not how everybody. That's not how everybody is. Not everybody is just trying to be perceived as people of integrity. Some people want to be people of integrity, and they want to be respected if it's earned. But mostly, I am my own and harshest judge and critic. This person's a psychopath. They're setting up the idea that they're the person that gets to determine their moral compass, and only them. You need other people to determine your moral compass. Your morality is determined by more than just you. But a pathological person tries to take concepts like morality or empathy that need to be determined by other people, and they try to insist with a fake righteous air that they're the only person that needs to do that. I have to live inside my own head after all. And then they try to justify it. Yeah, I have to live inside. Well, it's true. They do have to live with their conscience. But that doesn't mean, and that doesn't justify them being like the person that determines these things, even though that's what they're setting up. And I'm aware of my own motivations. We know, you already said that part. I don't want to keep any shit in here with my consciousness is mostly keen. So they haven't spent any time explaining to us how they determine their moral compass. This is like all set up for some reason. My question is, where do also they're not going to say they're just going to turn it around on the person? My question is, where do you as a Christian get your moral compass from? So all this like vain setup to make it seem like they get to determine, and they're the only person, and they're their harshest critic and judge. So you shouldn't question the fact that they're the person determining it because they're such a harsh judge and critic. That's how a psychopath operates. They try to set it up so nobody else is able to determine things that are supposed to be determined with other people. The Bible is full of exhortations to do evil and divinely authorized slavery, torture, sexual assault, genocide, and all other manner of bad deeds. Even the New Testament involves a father sacrificing his own son to gain and extort loyal followers. Is the Bible your guide? They don't have an answer. They don't provide an answer. Why do they attack here? Why do they counterattack instead of providing an answer? Because they don't have an answer. Why do they set up all of this like signaling for like how they're their harshest critic and how you should trust them? Because they don't have an answer and they're an absolute fucking scumbag. The Bible is full of exhortations to like disingenuous representation. It's not full of those things. If you need threats of eternal damnation to stop you doing bad things, what does that say about your internal morals? You could fall for that bait. That's what they want you to do. They want you to fall for that bait. They want you so bad to fall for that bait. If you need threats of eternal damnation to stop you doing bad things, no one is saying that. That's not being presented with the question. If you don't have a religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? That's not being presented here. This person has added that so that they can maybe seem like they provide an answer because they don't have an answer, but they still want to be perceived as having an answer. That's an egotistical person. Counterattack, a false dichotomy, and a non-answer. All in one sentence. I'll also point out now that the type of people that have these like combined fallacies in like one statement are almost always truly evil people. Like if you're an innocent person, a selfless person, you might make one mistake. Like you might be like you might say something like religious doesn't know, and then that's like one mistake. Religion doesn't give us a good moral compass. That's just counterattacking without the false dichotomy. And then maybe if you provide an answer, then you don't have the non-answer. But when it's four things, a false dichotomy, a projected counterattack, a non-answer digression, that's a pathological person. They have committed to being pathological, which is why they have a combination of different pathological or fallacious responses. I asked them why they need a book or the threat of eternal damnation. Wow, like a lot of people like to copy that. Threat of eternal damnation in order to keep them from being a bad person. They don't. Nobody said that. That person is distracting. They don't have an answer to the question. So they're counterattacking with the same false dichotomy that a bunch of other idiots in this thread have used. Atheists tend to present themselves as being morally and intellectually superior. And although I don't subscribe to any established religion, I still don't doubt the possibility that there could be a God. I just don't have I can't prove to you. But these people are more like militant or strong atheists. They're arrogant. They're egotistical. They think that they can speak to the idea that theists are stupid and that their beliefs are dumb and all this stuff, and that they'll get away with it. The reality is they know at least subconsciously that they don't have an answer to this question and that they're likely a scumbag. I sexually assault and abuse the exact same amount of people I like. Absolutely none. And I don't need a threat to prevent me from hurting people. This person quotes Penn Jillette but doesn't even reference that he's quoting. Just tries to make it sound like they made it up. Yeah. I can do this on my own. which is a counterattack, a false dichotomy that they've introduced and then projected, a non-answer, and the 7th time that Penn Jillette's dumbass quote has been brought into this thread. Out of 66 responses. I ask, how do you know slavery is wrong? Because the Bible doesn't forbid it. So you don't answer the question, you ask them a question back, so you don't have an answer. They just try to make religion look bad. The counterattack, they don't provide an answer. My abundant empathy and keen grasp of right and wrong. So, if you have so much empathy, then one would think that you would use that empathy to realize that other people are going to want to understand how to have that much empathy and to have a keen grasp of right and wrong, which is literally what a moral compass refers to. So the person's using circular logic, but they reframed it so that it seems like they're not using circular logic, and then they don't actually provide an answer. Like, my abundant empathy. How does your abundant empathy help you in determining your moral compass? You're just going to refer to empathy and hope that everyone accepts that, so you don't have an actual answer. That's what this person is doing. Linda North, they can't even explain what empathy is. So they just skip right past it and go to circular logic. Circular logic, potential but incomplete answer. There is only one moral rule you need in life. Don't be a dick. How do you determine not to be a dick? That one rule doesn't actually satisfy the question that we're trying to answer. Because you don't have from that one rule how you're determining how to be a dick, which is the same thing as having a moral compass. So this is circular logic, again. Arrogant circular logic. This is circular logic, it's not even an answer. It's pretty easy to look around and want things to be better for everything, and then you just start making a list. How do you determine what to put on the list? And before you know it, this person's all copying. It's pretty easy. That's a red flag, where you can start telling that the person that you're reading or listening to is copying. It's pretty easy. Before you know it, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. It's pretty easy to look around and want things to be better for everything, and then you just start making a list, and before you know it, your list is better than any God's works. How could you know? You don't know how God's works. And the concept of and how are you determining better? That's literally the fucking question. And the concept of an omnipotent being that allows such unnecessary suffering to continue is just not worthy of any acknowledgement or worship. That may be true, but they didn't answer the question. So many scumbags do this. I am Harry. Harry, you are a fucking scumbag. You did not answer the question, dumbass. It's pretty easy. If it's so easy, then how come you didn't explain it? They took this time to counterattack, to try and make theism look bad, to try and make themselves look good, but they didn't ever actually provide an answer to this question while they were doing that. We're 70 in, and we don't have any complete answers. I'm going to give you a complete answer. It's going to be embarrassing for the entirety of the atheist subreddit, and when you realize that the rest of people on Reddit and the rest of people that tend to argue use these same stupid tricks, these gimmicks that go unrealized and you're conditioned to accept, then it's going to be so embarrassing for basically the whole internet. Because the whole internet argues like this. Like these people do. I don't. I kill and sexually assault everyone who's in my path. So they're referencing the Penn Jillette quote, but without even making it clear how that quote thought it was supposed to work. So we'll just say that they have Penn Jillette quote. This is some weak shit. This is like somehow worse than the other ones. At least with the other ones we could tell how the person was being delusional. Humans are a social species. Oh, we've heard that one. And we require cooperation to subsist. If we require cooperation to subsist, then how are there evil people? Oh, oops, I just deconstructed it in one sentence. They thought they were so smart. We're a social species. They probably copied that from some dumbass pseudo-intellectual, maybe on a podcast that thinks that they're smart. And we require cooperation to subsist. Oh, that sounds so good. When I just want literally anything to sound good in opposition to the question. This means doing actions and supporting policies that protect people, society, children, education, healthcare, the environment. We have those things, but we also have immoral people, despite the fact that we're a social species and despite the fact that you're claiming that we require cooperation to subsist. So clearly we don't require cooperation to subsist. A lot of pathological people get away with being in the good graces of people that they've intimidated and abused, and people that they've manipulated and misled. So they're not required to actually cooperate. They're like making things worse constantly. It's just that people can't tell. So it's not a requirement that we cooperate and able to subsist. This is a bullshit narrative. So what is this? And on top of that, I'm looking at it again, it doesn't explain how we determine the right means for cooperation. This means doing actions and supporting policies that protect people. How do we determine that it's protecting them? How do we determine that it's protecting society? How do we determine that we're protecting education? That's literally the question that's being asked. So this is a non-answer. And then, what is this? Humans are a social species. So like an unacceptable answer. We can easily disprove this thesis that we require cooperation to subsist. It's easy to disprove. You only fall for it if you didn't stop to consider at all. If you're not actually thinking about what's being said, then you'll fall for it. Stupid questions don't require serious answers. Also, you're going to just dismiss them. You don't have an answer then. Therefore, my answer would be, from my ass. So they give us some truth, which is that they pull their answer out of their ass. A term that means that they don't actually have an answer. Stupid questions. Oh, so stupid questions? So you're counterattacking, just dismissing, not providing an answer. 49 counterattacks. We haven't even got to 100. I'm moral because I know what's right and wrong. Alright, the question is, how do you know what's right and wrong? The question didn't assume that you don't know it. You're moral because you want a reward of punishment. Alright, so they don't have an answer then? They can't answer the question, so they counterattack. With their false dichotomy, they give no answer. Oh, they have circular logic. Wow, 4 types of fallacies in one. From Wolfman's Got Nard. Integrity, empathy, and compassion. People had morals long before religion popped up. Alright, how integrity and morality are intertwined enough where this isn't really an explanation. Like, you're not telling us how you determine having integrity, which you would have due to establishing morality and ethics. Empathy with no explanation. Compassion with no explanation. And then the person digresses to a counterattack. People had morals long before religion popped up. So this is a spiteful, resentful response, actually. They try to make it seem loving and caring so that you don't realize that they're not providing an answer. They're giving us the potential for answers. Maybe with empathy, you could determine an answer, but they don't actually tell you how they're determining that moral compass with empathy. They're just using a word that they think will put them in people's good graces. So they don't have an answer. It's not a non-answer, but a potential but incomplete answer is as much as we could say. I'll tell you now, they don't have an answer. Tell them if they need the threat of punishment from a deity, then they're not a good person. Another counterattack. False dichotomy. A non-answer. Just a general petty response. If the only thing stopping you from being a bad person is the threat of some sort of punishment, you're not actually practicing any form of morality. So literally the same thing as the last response. These dumbass atheists that are responding, not all atheists are dumbasses, but the ones that are responding so far have been almost exclusively dumbasses. They would try to appeal to popularity and be like, well, maybe if a lot of people are saying it, that means it's true. Nope, that's an appeal to popularity. There is no truth in the idea that because a lot of people are saying something, that it's true. If there was truth to what they're saying, they would explain what they're saying. My parents. So that's like the golden rule, but it's not the golden rule. It's a moral guide. So we have a new answer. 78 answers in. We have a new answer, which is moral guide. But this is also only a potential but incomplete answer. So your parents taught you to have a moral compass? What did they teach you? We don't have an answer for that. They didn't actually answer the question. They gave us the opportunity to consider that they might be able to answer the question. It's incredibly unlikely that they have an actual answer, which is why they implied having one instead of actually telling us, your parents what? What did they teach you? If your parents truly did teach you about morals, then you should be able to explain to us what they taught you. If you can't explain to us what they taught you, then you probably copied everything that they said, but you don't understand any of it, and that's why you can't explain it to us now. General deterrence. So, being deterred from doing things is how you determine morality. Good parents, so moral guide. An appreciation for other people. Appreciation and morality are not the same thing. There's no overlap. All of these can help anyone live a moral life without a book and a counterattack. You can live a moral life without a book. No one said you can't. They're asking how you do. And that's why it's a counterattack. This person doesn't... It's a good general deterrence, good parents, so moral guide, but no explanation of that. So like a potential but incomplete answer and a counterattack. If you need the threat of eternal damnation, so many times, then you're not a good person. Alright, well, if you need to make the other person look bad in order to make yourself look good, then you're not a good person either. So what we have at best is best case scenario for this narcissistic scumbag Griffin Cog and all the other people using that type of argument is that they're not moral people, but neither are the people asking the question, which is an assumption. It's like best case scenario for them. Worst case scenario for them is that they need the threat of eternal damnation and they're projecting that onto the other people. And because they aren't acknowledging that threat of eternal damnation, they're not being good people. And then they're projecting that result onto other people to dismiss those other people and to deflect the question. And that's very likely what's happening. Most of us are born with a moral compass. Oh, so hopefully this person will explain to us what moral compass we're born with. They have so much more that they're going to say. Only psychopaths and sociopaths are born without a moral compass. Oh my god. Is this going to be a counterattack against religion? And oddly enough, it's like a soundboarded phrase, a copied phrase. It isn't religion that keeps some of them in line, but fear of being tossed in an earthly prison. So they're saying religion isn't doing a good job of stopping them from being immoral. That doesn't... So, like, these people are evil people that, even when provided with something to follow, they don't follow it. Okay, well, how do we... what's the moral compass we're born with? It seems like that's all a distraction. If I were lacking in a moral compass... Okay, so they're just going to assume that they have a moral compass. They're not going to explain it to us. I could just check my local, state, and federal laws for guidance. Laws and morality are not the same. Not some old book that's cool, genocide and slavery. There's the counterattack. In case you thought that we were going to get through there without them being like a petty little bitch. There's the counterattack. When people talk like that, where they're not providing the answer to the question, they don't have an answer to the question. That's why they're not answering the question. It's important to realize what people are actually saying and when they're not actually saying anything. Like this person does. I don't need the invisible sky police to be a good human. You shouldn't have to try to be decent. Okay? Accept it that you don't need invisible sky police to be a good human. So then, how are you a good human? That's literally the question. Without the sky police, how are you a good human? Regardless of eternal judgment. So no answer? You don't have an answer then? You want to consider this for yourself too. If someone asks you questions and then you start panicking and being like, you shouldn't need whatever explanation you have to answer the question, you need to like check yourself and realize you're not answering the question. You don't want to become like these dumbass scumbags and like not be able to answer basic ass questions. Like, I can answer the question. I'm going to answer the question. I'm going to recover the golden rule and explain why the golden rule is not satisfactory as an answer, which I've done. But then I'm going to explain to you how you get to an actual answer, what the actual answer is. These people don't have an answer. If you respond to things in this way, you need to start checking yourself. These people do not check themselves. They keep arrogantly assuming that because so many of them are responding in these arrogant, petty ways, that must mean that there's some right to what they're doing, which is an appeal to popularity. It doesn't matter that so many of them are responding this way. They don't understand how to answer the question, which is why they keep avoiding answering it. If I need religion to give me a moral compass, I didn't deserve a moral compass in the first place. What? So they didn't answer the question? It's a non-answer. If I needed religion to give me a moral compass, I didn't deserve one in the first place. That doesn't logically follow. How does that make sense? Well, I don't have it. What if you do need a religion to give you a moral compass? And not having one means you don't have a moral compass. That doesn't mean that you don't deserve one. I say I hope you're not referring to the Bible. You already know it's going to be a counterattack. You don't have to see the rest of it. You already know it's going to be a counterattack. We're going to read the rest of it because you don't want to be a presumptuous dumbass like these people are and just assume what people are going to say and then base everything that you do and react to off of your assumptions. You want to confirm. Even if you feel very confident that you know where it's going, you still want to confirm. I'm just pointing out to you, You can tell it has the signals of a red flag. I say, I hope you're not referring to the Bible. It's some copied phrase. I hope you're not referring to this. The thing that I know you're referring to, I hope you're not referring to that. This is all set up for me dunking on the idea. I hope you're not referring to the Bible with all the sexual assault, incest, murder, and slavery, not really a good moral compass source. Then what is? The question is for you to provide what is. How do you know it's not a good moral compass unless you have something to contrast it with? Oh, but you're not going to provide it, so you don't know? You're just attacked by the question egotistically, so then you attack the question back even though it never did that to you, and it was all in your mind. These people are not smart. They really want the perception of being smart, though. They counterattack. They don't provide an answer. Pretty easy. I said before, when someone says that, pretty easy, that is a gigantic red flag. They have copied that phrase. They're soundboarding. Pretty easy. They're arrogant. Their response is incredibly unlikely to be satisfactory or even relevant. The laws of the municipality, state, nation. Laws and morals are not the same. Laws don't even help you determine morals. They don't help you determine what's right and wrong universally. Laws help you determine what is considered acceptable and unacceptable within a society and how punishment or consequences are enacted. I don't make people's lives harder. Okay. I help when I can for people I care about. But how do you determine that you're helping? That's the question. What I don't do is ask for help being a good person from the Bible, which says slavery is acceptable. Oh, there's a counterattack. Worship that? Nope. Worship that? Nope. A question that you already know the answer I'm going to give to you? Nope. The answer you already knew I was going to give? So we counterattack 58. A non-answer. Or actually, this is an unacceptable answer. They tried to force an answer, but it was unacceptable. Common sense. I really do get the sense that people that say common sense for every context. Any context that people are like, common sense, they don't have an explanation. They're hoping that you'll just accept it. Because you'll be like, oh, common sense. Well, I'll look stupid if I don't say that I practice common sense. Like, it's totally acceptable to ask somebody what they mean by common sense. We can't ask this person, but what I can tell you from experience is that the type of person that tries to give such a brief response that is clearly not even an actual relevant answer to the question isn't going to be able to explain their answer anyway. They're going to digress, they're going to change the subject, they're going to switch to some other gimmick to distract you, but they're not going to give you an actual answer. So, unacceptable answer. Common sense. Mirror neurons. Oh, we've heard that before. What are mirror neurons? Where does that come from? Mirror neurons represent a distinctive class of neurons that discharge both when an individual executes a motor act and when he observes another individual perform the same or similar Okay, so it's just copying, but mirror neurons refers to a phenomenon of neural discharge, but it's actually copying. So how do you determine right from wrong? Copying. That's not having a moral compass. If you copy the wrong thing, you're not going to be acting morally. And in fact, even if you copy the right thing, you're not acting morally. You're just doing the thing that was accepted, that worked for other people. This is a pathological response. Mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are a term that were applied to a thing that has been observed. And we can accept that mirror neurons exist, but we don't have to accept the people that are referring to it as a way of determining their moral compass or giving a valid response. This is an illegitimate response. We're a social animal. Oh, there's the social animal thing again. This is definitely coming from some pathological source that people are putting their trust in. We're a social animal, not a solitary one. We need other people to help us survive. Other people won't willingly live with us or help us if we lie, cheat, steal, sexually assault, and murder our way through our community, except that does happen. And people do willingly live with those people, especially since they're intimidated, thinking that they're going to be lied about, cheated on, stolen from, harmed, etc., because that person is doing those things. So, us being social isn't like giving us some superpower that allows us to be moral, or else we would all be moral. Animals that live in communities typically have more mirror neurons than solitary ones in their brains. That makes sense because they're copying. They have things to copy from. Not because they have a moral compass. Mirror neurons enable us to learn by mimicking, but also to mimic what it would feel like to be other people around us if we started abusing them. Mimicking, copying are not learning. This person doesn't understand that. They really want it to be the case. And so do sociopaths. So do psychopathic scumbags. Because then their lazy approach of copying whatever other people are doing, what worked for other people, then that seems like it's acceptable. It's not acceptable. You don't ever get anywhere with it. Because you don't understand what you're doing. And the moment that a scenario is presented to you that isn't a scenario that you have copied from, everything falls apart. Where are your mirror neurons now? You're in a scenario that somebody else hasn't experienced that you could copy from? Where are your mirror neurons now? You have no fundamental understanding because all you've been doing is copying. Pathological people realize that at some point, but they don't want to admit that that's the case. So, this is... mirror neurons is an unacceptable answer. Their explanation here is a disingenuous representation. They try to disingenuously assert the conclusion that because we're social and that because we need other people, that other people won't be willing to help us in any way if we do terrible things, except people help terrible people constantly, all the time. And one of our most egregious forms of immoral acts with Hitler, like he was helped by other people, and it was all social. They're all sitting there in their big groups, yeah, the Jews, wah, gassing people, concentration camps. Like that was all socially enabled. So being social creatures isn't like actually doing anything. Even if it's true that we have mirror neurons, and even if it's true that we're social primates or social animals, whatever, that still isn't explaining our moral compass, and it isn't guaranteeing a moral compass for us, even though that's how these people are presenting it. So some incredibly dangerous psychopath is going around convincing people to like think that we're all already morally guided and helping each other socially, even though we have direct examples that contradict that thesis. Empirical evidences, why didn't they just say evidence? Because they're soundboarding, so red flag. Empirical evidences that social cooperation is better than murder, theft, plunder, etc. to have a prosperous society. It is better to have those things, but people don't do them, which is why we have the fucking question we're talking about. The entire discussion comes from acknowledging that people don't follow that, even if it is clear when you really look at it. So, we have to determine, how do you determine your moral compass? Because there are people that aren't determining their moral compass and aren't socially cooperating. How are the people that are socially cooperating determining their moral compass, if they have one, compared to the people that aren't socially cooperating? This person doesn't provide that. They don't have an answer. This is a non-answer. It like seems like an answer. It seems like maybe this person's giving us an answer, but the reality is that they never gave us an answer. They're using like gimmicks to create the perception of giving answers to questions they don't know the answer to, but still want to be perceived as having answers to. They're vain. Martin the Wild Pig is a vain, egotistical moron that hasn't really considered the question, but still wants to be perceived as someone that knows better. I don't engage in these conversations. That's like a giant red flag for an abusive person, is that they disengage from conversations they don't like. A moral person wants to engage in every type of conversation and get to some type of resolution that benefits everyone. An immoral person finds excuses to disengage because all they really care about is their ego and their image. So if they can't accomplish looking like a good person because they don't have any actual understanding of what that means, then they will forego the entire conversation. A person who cannot tell the difference between right and wrong without first looking up in an ancient book has no right to question anyone's moral compass. Alright, that may be true, but you didn't provide an answer. As a counterattack. A false dichotomy that they projected onto another person, and a lack of an answer. Or 88 in. We're going to at least 100. If you need religion to tell you to be a good person, then you're not a good person. I'm not even going to explain this one at this point. You already know what it is. You'll see the numbers increment. Even if I accept the premise, alright, they're not a good person. But now we don't know if you're a good person because you didn't answer the fucking question. If anything, we're being led to the idea that bulky meringue 733 is also not a good person, and they're taking this opportunity to project it onto other people. I don't understand why myself is not a good answer. Holy shit. What an egotistical response. I don't know why myself is not a good answer. You don't know why it doesn't make sense that an answer to determining morality can't be determined from only within. That's so egotistical. You need other people to determine morals. How do you know that you're determining acceptable morals, things that are good and bad, without considering outside of yourself? You're not determining what's good and bad at that point. You're just considering what you want. You're being selfish at that point. A lot of these people are egotistical. Is it supposed to be a bad thing that I'm an inherently moral agent rather than needing someone to tell me what to do? What if I send up this baiting question? There's another opportunity to learn. When someone throws out a question like that, it's like the answer is clearly no. But they're presenting it in this way that suggests that they're like making a point. That's a pathological scumbag. Is it supposed to be a bad thing that I'm an inherently moral agent? What they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to focus on that question and answer it. Instead of stopping and being like, there's something fundamentally wrong with your first part. I don't understand why myself is not a good answer. You're being vain. And then explaining that. They subconsciously realize that they don't understand what they're talking about. They don't know where to go with this. They try to make the opposite of what they're doing seem bad. So it's like a lot of these other people. They're counterattacking. They're not providing an answer. They didn't provide a false dichotomy, I don't think. So you only get your moral compass from religion? That's how you know it's a false dichotomy. The implication is that you can only get your moral compass from religion. If it wasn't for religion, you'd be out every night hurting people, murdering them. Sheesh. More copying. Pathological scumbag. Sheesh. So you only get your sheesh. That's how a pathological person talks. They copied the delivery that other people have got away with in similar discussions. And they're doing that so that hopefully you think, hello, Utmost Piper Q. I see you. I hope you guys will be around more. The type of person that talks like that is like, they're copying, because pathological people copy. They don't understand things fundamentally. They're too lazy and selfish for that. So they're copying things that worked for other people. That's what this person's doing here. Sheesh. To maybe imply that, like, there's something wrong with you, and then, like, that works in a way that they don't really understand. Like, it creates anger. Because you're like, you take the person at their word, like, oh my god, this person actually thinks that I'd be doing that, and then it's going to make you upset. Because anger is a subconscious acknowledgement of a misunderstanding. So, like, subconsciously you realize there's a misunderstanding, but consciously you're not aware of the misunderstanding, which is that they're being a disingenuous actor. All of this is a counterattack from them. Counterattack 62. So you only get your moral compass from religion? Nobody implied that false dichotomy except you and the other people that feel attacked by the question. Illarioins, whatever that is. So non-answer. Absent from their entire answer is the answer to the question that was asked. If you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? So you only get your moral compass from religion? That's not an answer, dumbass. If it wasn't for religion, you'd be out every night doing terrible things? Sheesh. They did not answer the question. When a person talks like that, it's because they can't answer the question. And they feel threatened by the question. The question exposes them. They have this entire facade. Well, yeah, I know, I'm morally superior. Those theists are so dumb. They believe in make-believe, fairy tales, and other things that I copy from other people. And then someone goes, so how do you determine your moral compass without religion? And they're like, ah! 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 So you only get your moral compass from religion? These people are dumbasses. I hope you enjoyed that. I know a lot of people enjoy when I make fun of psychopaths with that scream. Ask them if morals come from religion. Why are there so many pedophile priests? Alright, counterattack. That's not answering the question. How do you determine your morals? Well, how come there are so many pedophile priests? That's not answering the question. This is not even close to answering the question. That doesn't even try to pretend to be answering the question. It's a counterattack and a non-answer. Plenty of those who claim religion clearly have no moral compass. Starts with a counterattack. Why do you presume the high ground? Yeah, not helpful, but quite true. This person is projecting. They're the one that's not being helpful. And then they're soundboarding, but quite true. Plenty of those who claim religion clearly have no moral compass. Even if we accept that premise, that's not answering the question. Why do you presume the high ground? They didn't! This is like another thing that pathological people do, is they just start projecting onto what was said. They're like, they insert things that were never there. This is the question. How do you respond to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? The reason I ask this is because my friend at school asked me this when I said I'm starting to feel more atheist. Where in this is a moral high ground implied? Nowhere. This person is so delusional, they're not responding to reality. That's how egotistical they are. They're like, I'm not even going to regard reality. I'll just pretend that the person presumed the high ground. So this person is projecting onto them the high ground. This person is presuming the high ground. Roakana. To continue, and they're copying so many things. To continue, just continue, dumbass. To continue, why do you need an invisible entity to have a moral code? No one said that. Would you run wild and be debased without being told what to do? This is just various forms of the same stupid argument. It's the same false dichotomy. Oh, so you need religion to be moral? No one said that. That's being projected onto what's being asked as a way of deflecting from answering the question. Answer 93. We're 93 in. Still counterattacks. 64 counterattacks. 64 of the 93 responses include somebody like lunging at a fucking neutral question because their ego can't handle the realization that they don't have an answer to it. I'm going to give you an answer. And we're not far away from me giving you that answer. But these people don't even try to give an answer. They don't have one. Non-answer. Alright. From using my brain. How do you use your brain? That's like potentially an answer. Your brain helps you be a moral compass? Your brain is innately a moral compass? Okay, then how does it guide you? How does it point like a compass does? Just from using my brain? So just a cheeky, resentful comment and then nothing else. Still gets an upvote from the dumbass original poster. So no answer from using my brain. We'll go with potential but incomplete answer. And then, because they didn't actually use their brain to understand that they needed to like provide more with this, we'll add disingenuous representation. Empathy. Compassion. Okay, so somehow in the rest of this post, they're going to have to explain to us how empathy and compassion guides them. I really love telling Christians that I don't have to rely on a book to tell me what's right or wrong. Oh, but they just counterattack instead, because they don't have a fucking answer. They just want to use good words that will make them look good too. Empathy. What does empathy mean? They don't know. Empathy is a selfless regard for another's perspective. They'd copy that from me, but if you ask them to tell you what empathy is, they wouldn't give you anything but vanity. They counterattack. And potential but incomplete answer. All of the potential but incomplete answers that we've had have been coming with counterattacks that demonstrate that these people don't... It's not just an incomplete answer because they failed to meet any type of method for us understanding what they're saying, but they don't have any means of making that explanation to us. Which is why they counterattack. That they start getting like egotistical and resentful because they really thought that they were so much better, and now they're like presented with this question and they're sitting there like deep down in their heart they're like, fuck, I don't know anything about morals. Considering how my actions affect others is not a difficult thing for me to do. Is that something you struggle with? If it's not a difficult thing for you to do, then explain to us what it is you're doing that's so not difficult. But you don't, you counterattack instead? You don't fucking have an answer, McGasm. There are so many of these arrogant idiots that can't explain anything, so they counterattack. They don't provide an answer, they counterattack. Perineum says, don't be a dick is kind of a simple baseline. That's circular logic. We're trying to determine how you figure out to not be a dick. No need for a sky daddy for such a simple concept. Oh, it's weird that the sky daddy thing has come up multiple times, and then there's like the Sky Patrol one as well. That seems like it could be different, but Sky Daddy? That's weird. That's like somebody else is saying this, and they're like copying from some podcast imbecile, some dumbass atheist celebrity that says stupid shit that sounds good on paper but isn't. Don't be a dick is a simple baseline. You know what don't be a dick is also? It's circular logic. We don't have an explanation. No need for a sky daddy for such a simple concept. This is like clearly also a counterattack. They're trying to make God, the idea of God, seem simple. It's so simple compared to me. But also, they have a simple baseline. This person is simple, they're projecting. And they get us to circular logic. So they didn't actually provide an answer. If the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, then brother, that person is... Oh, the Russ Cole quote. Alright, so the Russ Cole quote is... a counterattack. They're attacking the question. A false dichotomy. If the only thing keeping a person decent is the expectation of divine reward, you don't know that's the case for someone that asks the question. They could use religion as a moral compass, and they could use other methods, but they're just not sure how you figured out those other methods without having the foundation of religion to guide you towards those other methods. That's entirely possible. So that's why this is like a false dichotomy. It doesn't have to be this way, but it's not a false dichotomy in the way that people usually use false dichotomies. They usually like propose the false dichotomy and try to get you to fall for it. In this case, they try to get people to fall. They can try to get like us, the readers, people that are like seeing these discussions, to fall for the idea that the theist introduced the false dichotomy. The theist didn't introduce the false dichotomy. They projected that onto the theist to make them look bad. So that you won't realize that they're not answering the question. So Rust Cole's been quoted 3 times, Pendula has been quoted 8 times, so more than 10% of these answers have been quotes. So you're saying it's only for your fear of God that you see this one as I slowly back away to never be in their presence again. Oh, a person from earlier had that same response, and then I'll slowly back away. Yeah, that's because they were like untrustworthy. I'll slowly back away. Nope. This person, OK Camp 598, and the other person are copycat scumbags. So you're saying this thing that you're not saying? Nope. That's why they're asking, too. Pathological people do that often. They ask you, is this ridiculous thing what you're saying? They don't say that you're saying that. They don't make statements about what you're saying because they're lying. And there are limits to how they can lie. So they counterattack, present their false dichotomy, and they don't present an answer. I would talk about secular humanism and the natural laws of man. You would talk about secular... So we're not going through all of these because apparently we're at almost 100. There are like 1,600 more replies. I am going to look at more than 100 though because I'm going to look at a few more to see if there are like comments in the negative that got buried to see what they're saying. I would talk about secular humanism and the natural laws of man. You can pick up a copy of many of my books for reference. This person's like practically plugging themselves. Or C.S. Oh, they're plugging C.S. Lewis. I would talk about secular humanism. Why didn't you just talk about secular humanism now? Instead, you're like telling us to look at books. This person doesn't know. Even though they read these books, they didn't get to understanding. They just copied from them. Oh, I'll copy this and I'll copy this when I get into arguments. And then that didn't even work out enough for them. So all they can do is copy the title and tell you to go look it up. And the natural laws of man. You can pick up a copy of many of my books for reference. Or of C.S. Lewis's books. So this person is number 100. And how would we categorize this? I would talk about secular humanism. You can pick up a copy. So this would be like moral guide. We have that. They provide a moral guide, but it's also a potential but incomplete answer. They don't give us a moral guide that we can be like, oh, that totally makes sense and is applicable to everyone. All right, there are 2 more here. I'll go through both of them, and then I'm gonna like try and find things that are in the negative. Like a few of those before I go to explain an actual answer to the question. I'm going to answer, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to answer that question that actually answers how you do it as well, but you just don't realize. And then hopefully you'll be able to do it more with more intentionality after I explain it to you. As Liv Dem says, the golden rule and the harm principle. So this person refers to the golden rule. They don't explain it, so it's an incomplete answer for us. Potential but incomplete answer. Unrealized, golden rule. And then the harm principle is like half of the golden rule. The golden rule is like treat others how you'd want to be treated, which is implied don't treat them how you wouldn't want to be treated at the same time. And then the harm principle is that second part. Don't treat people how you wouldn't want to be treated. Don't cause harm to other people. So this person, their response is at least better. They don't like, and religion doesn't get that, or whatever stupid fucking responses these other people largely have. Well, like this one. Well, the Bible condones and demands in some cases rape, slavery, murder, infanticide, the razing of entire towns, and genocide. So I'd ask your friend if they think any of those are moral, and if not, how are they reaching that conclusion without the Bible? So you don't have an answer? You want them to give you an answer? They're like fishing for an answer, and then they'll probably pretend that whatever answer was given to them was what they wanted, if it makes sense. Just like any scumbags that listen to this are going to take the answer that I give and pretend that they would have given the same answer. But if you can't come up with the answer before I give it to you, then you don't fucking understand the answer that I'm giving to you. And you will have to go learn the answer that I'm going to go give to you. And you will be empowered by doing so. But if you don't have it right now, you won't be serving anyone, including yourself, to lie about understanding it like this person does. So they counterattack. They don't provide an answer. 102 responses. I don't want to have to do like more and then do more and more and more. So I'm gonna come up here, change this controversial. See if we can find. I never get asked that, to be honest. All right, well that doesn't help us with understanding. Better police than religious people get theirs. Oh, this is controversial. So is this one. Tell them it comes from your ethical nature, and that anyone who only does the right thing out of fear of hell is nothing. Okay, it comes from your ethical nature? Explain what your ethical nature is. That's what the question is. That's a stupid question. Projection. We're social primates and hardwired. Some of these are the ones that we've seen already. Almost all of these. Here's one. I'm working it out as I go. Just like you are. My guiding principle is really asking, what kind of society do I want to live in? And how do I gently push society in that direction? That's like a different type of response. Someone needs God to be a good person. That person's a piece of shit. That's not a different type of response. Alright. So that about summarizes what we got here from these people. So let's just look at this one more time. Question is, how do you respond to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? Here's the source. The only other thing that was added to this post is the reason I asked this is because my friend at school asked me this when I said I'm starting to feel more atheist. So that's where, knowing this is where I'm coming from when I say that a lot of these people that have responded are not responding to what was asked. They like imagined what they wanted instead. Instead of like genuinely answering the question, they imagined what was said. They imagined somebody taking the moral high ground. There's no moral high ground communicated in this post. And also, to reiterate, the reason why I'm showing you this is because this is taken from my phone, and in the original post, it's like marked as removed, so you can't see Like you can see that it's the same person, the B username. You can see that it's the same exact question, the same, well, maybe not the same upvotes, but it's the same question. But you can't see this part, the like description or summary, whatever this would be. So you could be misled then if I didn't show you this to thinking that there was more in here that these people are responding to, but they're not. So how do you respond to, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? And within the thread, we have 102 responses that we've thoroughly looked through and explored. 70 of those 102 responses involve the person counterattacking the question. 31 of them involved introducing a false dichotomy. Almost all of those where they projected the false dichotomy as being presented by the person asking the question falsely. 2 straw man arguments, 9 circular logic fallacies, 70 non-answers. Not all of the counterattacks were also non-answers in the same way, but the numbers ended up being the same. Potential but incomplete answers was 16. So that was like, answers were like maybe, like, philosophy. If someone brought up philosophy, they're like, okay, well, how did you get to it from philosophy, though? Or empathy. Okay, but then how does empathy get you there? They don't explain that, so it's an incomplete answer. Penn Jillette gets quoted 8 times, the same exact quote. Rust Cole from True Detective, the fictional character, gets quoted 3 times, the same quote, with varying lengths of the quote. Unacceptable answers, there sure 5 of the answers were completely unacceptable. Like you could easily rationalize how the answer didn't make sense. Disingenuous representation, just lying 7 times. Unrealized golden rule, so people refer to the golden rule, but they demonstrated otherwise that they don't practice the golden rule, so they shouldn't be invoking it because they don't understand it, 4 times. Realized golden rule, 1 time. Moral guide, 3 times. Complete answers, 0. So right now, what I'm going to give you is an actual complete answer. This is what I'm going to actually answer. You've seen all of these people try to answer the question. My answer is not going to be anything like theirs because I actually understand the answer to this question. I'm not saying that this is the only answer, but it is an answer. So, in order to explain the entire answer, you're going to have to understand other concepts. You have to understand emotional signaling, which is the dominant feeling that you experience while actually processing empathy. When you're talking to someone and they say something that's not true, but you don't realize that they say something that's not true, and you commit to it, then you start to experience anger, and you start to experience laughter under different subconscious circumstances, and weeping and crying and fear are all different emotional signaling that you experience. You consider what someone said, and then you start to experience emotions. Well, that same concept applies to determining morality. When you go to do something bad, like steal, you're like, oh, maybe I'll take this, and maybe I'll get away with it. As you go to do it, you start to feel bad. You start to feel the emotional signaling for shame and guilt. You start to feel that before you do the thing. If you commit to a bad thing, something that is immoral, then afterwards, not only will you be like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that thing, but you also feel more pronounced emotional signaling that suggests like, yep, you definitely should not have done that thing. You knew it was wrong. So how do we determine a moral compass? Through emotional signaling. Emotional signaling guides us to know, like, don't keep going that way. You're going to go like, hit that person. Don't keep doing that. Don't put that fist down. You can feel that emotional signaling inside of you, in your conscience. You feel the turmoil of some type of signaling from something outside of yourself being like, no, that's not right. And then when you consider that more, you realize, yeah, that's not right. If you do the thing, you commit to a bad thing, afterwards you're like, oh, I feel really bad because I knew going into it that I shouldn't have done it, and now I really feel like I shouldn't have done it afterwards. I really feel like there's like more pronounced emotional signaling, and you carry that guilt with you in your conscience. That is the moral compass that you have with empathy if you're actually practicing empathy. If you're not like these vain idiots from Reddit who like don't practice empathy but just throw the word out and pretend that they understand it, but never mention emotional signaling because they don't understand empathy at all. So when you go to do something that's wrong, or you go to do something that's right, there's different emotional signaling that you experience. And at first you may not realize that. You may go to do something, you might feel it, but you're not really like paying attention, so you're not ultra sensitive to the emotional signaling that you're experiencing throughout life, and then you may commit to an idea that is immoral and something that is wrong. What religion does is it gives you religious foundational tenets. So where this question comes from with theists, how do you respond to, if you don't, or I guess that part isn't the question that theists asks, so I'm going to change this part now. The actual question that we're discussing is, if you don't have religion, then where do you get your moral compass from? It's fair that theists ask this question, because when you have religion and you have things like the commandments, then you can start from a basis of being like, well, these are the rules I've been presented with. And then if those rules are like, don't cheat, don't steal, don't murder people, then as you go to do things that these foundational tenets tell you not to do, you start to consistently experience those emotions. You're like, I'm going to steal this. Oh, there's this like emotion that comes with that I don't experience when I'm normally living my life. When I'm just eating some food that I didn't steal from somebody, I don't have that feeling. And then you go to cheat on someone, or you consider cheating on someone, and then you experience the same emotional signaling. The same emotional signaling that you had with cheating and stealing comes up before you go to do it, and it's more pronounced afterwards. It's easier to tell that is occurring when you have foundational tenets, because the foundational tenets are guiding you towards, if you start doing this thing, then you're going to be doing the wrong thing. And then as you go to do it, you're like, oh wait, that there's more than just knowing that it's the wrong thing. There's like something inside of me that knows that it's the wrong thing. There's some form of signaling and communication that's occurring emotionally to let me know that that's the wrong thing. Without foundational tenets, you might not realize that, or it will be more difficult to realize it because you don't have something guiding you. So religion provides foundational tenets that will help you in figuring out that you have a moral compass. But if you don't have a moral compass, or if you don't have something telling you that there are moral things to be pointing to and away from, then you may not figure out that a part of you is also doing that, which is why it's important to have foundational tenets. The golden rule is a foundational tenet, but the golden rule by itself is not satisfactory in determining how to be a moral person, because the golden rule is to treat people how you want to be treated, to treat people not how you don't want to be treated, which means that the rules for how you're determining how to treat people are coming only from you and are thus selfish. If somebody else wants to be treated differently, or somebody deserves to be treated a way that you don't want to be treated, then you're not going to figure that out because you're not practicing morality. You're copying the idea of whatever I would want is what everybody would want, which is vanity, and that's not morality. It's not moral to be that selfish. It's not helping people. It's not accomplishing good or bad. And when you are selfish like that, you feel the same, at least minor sense of guilt and shame as you go to commit to those actions. Once you have the foundational tenets, then you can start taking those ideas, and then you can pick up on the emotional signaling to be like, okay, so when I start experiencing this emotional signaling, it's like pretty consistently in alignment with the things I'm not supposed to do. So then if there's something that you're not supposed to do, but it's not covered by your foundational tenets, you still already have learned from them what this other feeling will be. So you'd be like, oh wait, I'm getting that feeling? oh, so maybe I shouldn't do this thing. What's wrong with this thing? And then you can think about it and be like, oh, it's selfish. Yeah, I'm being selfish about this thing. Like, I'm selfishly drawn to do it, but like deep down inside, I know I'm being selfish. Like, you try and convince people that you're not being selfish. You're like, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to benefit myself in any way. Like, people that say that are doing exactly that. And if you want to be a moral person, then you need to get to the point where you realize that that's exactly why you're trying to say that thing. Is because it is selfishly guided. And then you need to realize that the reason why nobody even said that and you're getting so defensive is because you're feeling the emotional signaling that suggests the guilt before you do the thing. That way, before you commit an act, even if you haven't been told by other people whether or not it's a bad thing, you can still determine that it's a bad thing. And then, one other consideration to go along with this, like that could all be summarized differently, but I made sure to give you a full explanation because I'm not limited to text, like the people in the comments in the Reddit thread are. But to summarize, your moral compass is the emotional signaling that you experience in your conscience while you consider ideas and while you recall actions that you have already completed. And that emotional signaling is consistent and demonstrates to you the difference between moral and immoral acts. With that, sometimes things like talking shit, like you might have noticed I was talking shit a lot. Sometimes things like talking shit feel righteous. Or in other words, being insulting isn't always going to give you that signaling. Because there is balance to the world. Karma. So if someone does something terrible and then you do that terrible thing back to them, life's like, yeah, you don't have to feel bad about that. That's how they're going to find out that they were being terrible. They're going to be like, oh, don't do that to me. Like, oh, you don't like your own behavior, dumbass? Oh, it makes you feel bad to experience your own behavior? Then maybe you should stop fucking doing it. So, life doesn't have that emotional signaling under certain circumstances where it actually makes sense to do something that otherwise doesn't make sense. So the emotional signaling is more profound. It's not actually limited to being static. It's not like always, well, if you steal from someone, it's bad. Someone steals from you and they think they got away with it, and then you steal from them in their face. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, oh, well, you took from me, so I'm taking back from you. And then they're stuck there, like, just feeling the guilt and the shame. And then you don't feel the guilt and shame. Lifestyle's actually like, good job. Here's the emotional signaling for righteousness. And the only time you experience emotional signaling for righteousness is when somebody is consciously lying about the truth, and then you're conscious about the truth, and you go to challenge them. Whereas the other things like anger's not the same as righteousness, and fear is not the same as anger or righteousness. They're different things. Anger is a subconscious acknowledgement of a misunderstanding. So if you're experiencing anger, that means that in some way there has been a commitment to an idea that is false, but you're not consciously aware of what that idea is. If you pay attention, you can figure out what the idea is, because you'd be like, what was the last thing that was introduced? Because I just got angry. Then with fear, it's almost the same thing, except with fear, you don't trust. And fear leads to other things. Like, fear is where violence and stuff comes from. When somebody doesn't trust, like MMA fighters don't fight each other because they're angry, even though like pathological people try to insist that anger and fear are practically the same thing. MMA fighters, like a mother goose that's defending their eggs, they're all fearful of what's going to happen to them from the person that they're fearful of. So fear is a subconscious acknowledgement of a misunderstanding minus trust. When you're angry, you trust the person. That's why you try to argue against them. You wouldn't trust them if you were trying to argue with them. Why would you be arguing with them? You don't trust them. So of course you trust them. People don't realize that either. And then righteousness, instead of being subconscious, is conscious. And all parties involved are conscious. So you understand what's right, and you're trying to communicate what's right. Then you have a lying piece of crap, and they're trying to lie about not understanding what's right. And then you're demanding that what is right be done. And that creates righteousness. That creates the fluctuation in your voice that is actually distinct from anger and fear. With fear, you can sense the anxiety, the panic. With anger, you sense the stubbornness. and the disapproval and the judgment. But with righteousness, it's a completely different feeling. So understanding emotional signaling is incredibly important to understand having a moral compass. And all those atheists that are trying to make it sound like they know what they're talking about, they don't know what they're talking about. So I'll establish the scale one last time for you. There are babies, goo goo gaga, they're right here. Below them are the atheists we were just reading responses from. The baby is better than the atheist because at least the baby isn't so arrogant and egotistical that they assume that they're imparting wisdom on others even though they have nothing of value to add. So here's where the atheists are from the atheist subreddit, who counterattack and don't provide answers to questions but want you to perceive them as such. They're down here. You can't even see them. They're in the negative. When it comes to understanding morality, they're in the negative. Then here's like neutral, which is a baby. They haven't done anything right or wrong yet necessarily. They don't even understand what those concepts mean, but at least they're not a dumbass that speaks out of turn. Then you have people that are aware of the golden rule. They're like a little bit better than the baby. They don't practice it though. Then you have people that practice the golden rule, but that's still not enough. And then you have people that understand and acknowledge balance and emotional signaling. And there might be more than that. But right here, this is the limit. No one can match me here. That's what I was saying. Like, I'm going to get to the end. I'm going to explain how it works. And you're going to be like, wow, that does make sense, actually. I go to do a bad thing. I feel emotional signaling. It's telling me not to do it. After I do it, that emotional signaling is more pronounced, but it actually was there before I did the thing. That totally all makes sense. How come nobody else said that? Because these dumbasses don't realize what they're doing. They're copying answers. I'm not copying. I use the scientific process over many decades to figure out, like, what is happening? What is happening here? People are saying that anger is toxic and unhealthy. That's not true. When I try to go towards that idea, I feel that moral friction of emotional signaling being like, don't go this direction. And I see other people getting mad just like those dumbass atheists in their subreddit, where they're like, they want so badly for me to go along with it, because then that'll mean that maybe they're right. But like, no, it doesn't mean it at all. That would just mean that I'm equally making the same mistakes as them. And I don't make the mistake. Instead, I'm like, that's not the right direction. So what is anger? People are like, anger is toxic and unhealthy. I'm like, oh, I'm getting the signaling for that's wrong. Morally, that's wrong. And then eventually I get like, oh, here's what anger is. So in order to get that, you have to fundamentally understand. For yourself, you have to like experience things and be like, okay, this person told me this thing and I'm angry. And then eventually you have to like go confirm with somebody else and be like, oh, what that person told me wasn't true. And then you stop being angry. And then you're like, oh, when I'm committed to a falsehood, I'm angry. Oh my God, when I don't realize that I'm sticking to something that's false, I'm angry. But the reason why it's so hard to figure that out is because the liars are trying to stop you from realizing that, because they're the ones creating all of the anger. So then for these atheists, there are likely a lot of people amongst those atheists that are doing the same thing, where like they don't want you to realize that they're creating so much anger. They don't want you to realize that they don't have any idea of morality. They don't want you to realize that they've been bumping into the rules of life and they've figured out how much of a scumbag they are. So then they try to misguide you because something happened and they want you to get to that point too. So I'm warning you, you can figure out where to get your moral compass from. You don't need religion. That also doesn't mean that religion doesn't have beliefs that are true and that you should consider. Because, like I mentioned before, that while I don't subscribe to a specific religion, I also believe that it's entirely possible that there's a God. And the reason for why I believe that now, even though I was an atheist and more leaning towards the direction of not believing that for many decades, is because when I started becoming righteous consistently and there were a lot of evil people around me, I started seeing signs of God. And I can't confirm that they were actually signs of God, but I was like, dude, what else could it be? This asshole is lying to me, and they're projecting onto me that I'm being manipulative. And then I call them out by saying that that statement itself was projection and an attempt at manipulation. And then they're staring at me like this, and then above me. And then I'm like, that's weird. Why are they looking above me? There's nothing behind me. They're like, and as much as like, there's this wall behind me. There was a wall behind me then. So, like, what are they looking at? There's nothing up here. But I didn't look. I was just looking at them, like, what are they doing? And then they're like, well, you need to have an incentive. And I'm like, wow, this person's panicking. But also, what? That didn't have anything to do with what we were just talking about. So then I asked them, like, who are you talking to? And then they panicked and they left. And I was like, that's weird. And then later on, I went to go eat, not long afterwards. And somebody kept looking at this. They kept looking like this. And they were like, staring. And there were other people there that were like, that seemed to like have some understanding of it, but they weren't staring. And I was like, why is that person staring above me? At first I wanted to be like, does that girl have a crush on me? Because it was a woman. Like, does that girl have a crush on me? And that's why she's staring at me. So I looked at her and I stared back at her. And she didn't stop, and then I looked closely, I was like, oh, she's not looking at me. So she doesn't realize I'm looking at her. She's looking up, above me, even though there's nothing there. So those are the types of signs that I've seen where I'm like, oh, like, there might be a God, but you have to be really, really fucking good at life to see any signs of it. And, like, you're not seeing the direct signs of it. There's that, and then there was also, while being righteous, seeing silver in people's eyes. Like, imagine the light in my eyes turned silver, but not the rest of everything else. It's such a strange phenomenon to see. And when I'm in the middle of being righteous while that's happening, so I don't take time to really think about it too much. I'm like, I need to keep doing what I'm doing because this person's being a scumbag, and I need to make it clear what is right and what is true. But the person, like, starts to get scared, and they're, like, clearly staring at something around me, and the light is only affecting their eyes. And I'm like, that is the type of thing that could be explained with divinity, but I'm not witnessing it myself. It's almost like the evil people get to see the most of it. Like, God's like, here you go, dumbass. You wanted to be truly evil? Now you get to see me. And now you get to know that you're fucked. But if you're a really good person, you only get, like, sort of these, like, outside things to perceive, and then you can't really tell. And so I think it's entirely possible that God is real. I just don't have any way of confirming that at this time. I have signs. But a big part of what helped me get there, aside from understanding empathy, not copying what other people are saying, is understanding morality. And in both of those is understanding the emotional signaling that you're experiencing and not ignoring that because other people tell you to, not subscribing to these stupid ideas that, like, these atheists are throwing about to make it seem like they know what they're talking about, but they clearly don't. I don't subscribe to any of that stuff. Instead, I'm like, that could be true, but I need to see for myself. And practically every time I go to see for myself, I see that it's not true. There are a lot of things that people believe that are not true. A lot of people would look at the atheists talking in those threads and think that they made some fair points. And yeah, that's true, because they want that to be the case, because they're vain and egotistical. They're narcissists. So they don't ever stop to consider that they might be wrong. Instead, they practice confirmation bias and only look for how they're right. So I'm telling you not to do that. You don't have to do it that way. Like, you might get friction from other people, but eventually you'll realize that you're getting friction from the worst people, and that they're the most convincing. Because they seem to have more information, and so they use that information against people to try and make innocent people selfish. And it doesn't have to be that way for you. You don't have to go down that route with them. And I'm certain that they are regretful in being down that route. But they're so stupid that they'll endlessly think that if they bring others down to that level, that it might bring them some type of solace, and it never does. So you need to figure things out for yourself. You need to regard your emotions and see what's consistent about your emotions. You need to confirm things. And then you will start to understand emotional signaling. You'll be like, oh, these emotional feelings are consistent with specific stimuli. I just don't know what they are yet. I gave you those explanations, but it's not going to serve you to copy those explanations. It's going to copy you to maybe consider that I could be right and then see for yourself. See, that's different how a liar does it. A liar tells you what to think. I'm telling you what to consider. That's the end for today. We'll see you all another time. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my explanation. Bye-bye.